Chapter 1453. This time, Li Shimin and the rest could no longer sit still. The wheat sprouted? How could it be so fast? How long had it been? Now from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, so much land was empty. There were even many people waiting for the seeds. And Zhang Feng's wheat sprouted? Did it have to be so fast? And most importantly, the wheat had only been planted for 10 days. It sprouted so quickly? One had to know that if the wheat was planted in the ground, it would take at most half a month for it to sprout, okay? Could it be that this was the effect of the phosphate fertilizer? Just as everyone was anticipating, Li Chengqian had already rushed over. Li Shimin couldn't wait to step forward and open Li Chengqian's hand. In Li Chengqian's hand, the wheat on his left hand already had a fingernail-high sprout. And on his right hand, it was the normal wheat, shriveled. Some had already withered. There were even some wheat that had been bitten by insects and rats until it was incomplete. Only an extremely small number of wheat had traces of tender white sprouts at the top. Looking at the seeds on Li Chengqian's left hand, which were full of tender yellow sprouts, they were still growing healthily. And most importantly, besides being slightly moist, the layer of ash on the seeds was still there. Li Shimin gently peeled off the ashes from the bottom of the pot. Not only were the seeds still plump, they were even more robust. In an instant, Li Shimin couldn't help but peel off the seeds in Li Chengqian's hand, revealing the plump seeds within. Wei Zheng, Yu Shinan and the rest also gathered around, staring at the seeds in Li Chengqian's hand with eyes full of shock. In an instant, the difference between those that had been filtered and those that hadn't. Needless to say, everyone could see it clearly. Li Shimin turned to look at Zhang Feng. Seeing that he seemed to be fine, he asked, "Fengzi, this thing of yours, did you use something else?" Zhang Feng shrugged and said, "This is the power of knowledge. Actually, Mr. Bosher and the rest saw it at that time. I just filtered the seeds, and then wrapped them with a layer of ash. The rest, I just used some phosphate fertilizer. That's all." This time, Li Shimin was really shocked. Wei Zheng and the rest also looked at Zhang Feng with eyes full of surprise. In their knowledge, the seeds in Li Chengqian's right hand were the most normal. The seeds that had sprouted in his left hand, they had never seen them before. Most importantly, it was hard to say whether Zhang Feng had really used something else. At this time, everyone looked at Yu Shinan, and the rest with a questioning look. Seeing this, Yu Shinan was also a little surprised and said, "This thing." Old man did see everything with his own eyes. The water was indeed taken from the stream. There was nothing different about it. "What?" Li Shimin exclaimed in shock. Just a little bit of ash from the bottom of the pot could have such a magical effect? Then in the past, in all the fields, there were people who burned a lot of ash. How could there be so many insects? But Yi Miao had never seen such a strong one before? Could it be? Was this the problem of the seeds? "Fengzi, tell me honestly, did you really select these seeds and then they will become like this?" Zhang Feng shook his head and said somewhat speechlessly, "I have said that this is the power of knowledge. You don't believe me? Fine, I am too lazy to waste my saliva. If you believe me, then do as I say. I promise that all your food this year will be doubled." After saying that, Zhang Feng put his hands behind his back and walked into the villa slowly. Lying on the stool in the villa's living room, he closed his eyes and rested. Seeing this, Li Shimin gritted his teeth. This guy was definitely taking revenge on them for making things difficult for him just now. Otherwise, why would he be like this? At this time, the few of them had no choice but to call Qing Chumo and the others over. Together with Yu Shinan, they carefully asked about everything that had happened in the field back then. The only thing left was to drag them to the fields to work on it personally. Li Shimin couldn't be blamed. After all, this seemingly simple but miraculous operation was really refreshing. Not to mention other things. However, it was such a simple move. It had only been 10 days. Comparing the two, there were already such significant results. What would happen in the future? Or the whole land of the Tang dynasty? What would happen if this method was used? Would it really be like what Zhang Feng said? Would there really be a bright and fruitful year? Li Shimin had to be cautious. After all, this was something that concerned the safety of all the people in the world. Once something went wrong, there would be consequences beyond redemption. This consequence, Li Shimin couldn't afford it. Not to mention whether there would be a plague of locusts next year. Even if there was no plague of locusts, the people had to be fed. This year's plague of locusts had wiped out the foundation of the whole Tang dynasty. What could Li Shimin do? What could he do? Chapter 1454. In fact, to put it bluntly, this thing was good. Li Shimin also wanted to do it, but this thing consumed too much food. Originally, 1 mu of land required 1 gene of seeds. Now Li Shimin calculated that it was at least 3 times the amount. This was not including the other things. Then what was the use of picking the rest? Eating. That was to say, on average, a family with more than 10 mu of land would need at least 30 gene of wheat to be able to filter out the seeds. How many people were there in the Tang dynasty? How many people were there in the Tang dynasty? How much food was there? If this was a normal day, it would be fine. They could save it all. But at this time, how could they save it? Not to mention the seeds, even now, there was not enough to eat. The food they had now was basically all of Li Shimin's savings. If something were to happen, he would have to starve. At this time, Li Shimin did not dare to imagine what would happen if something were to happen in the future. After all, although there was no news from Qiuzi for the time being, a war with Qiuzi would happen sooner or later. Once it broke out, it would be the most terrifying thing. At that time, there would be no food at all. Then at this time, Li Shimin's worried face stunned Li Chengqian. He looked at the expressions of Yu Shinan, Yu Qigong and the others. Although their eyes were full of surprise and love when they looked at the seeds, there seemed to be some worry. Li Chengqian could not help but ask in surprise, "Father, you are..." Li Shimin sighed and glanced at Zhang Feng in the villa, then said, "This matter, let's not talk about it for now. This matter can be discussed later." Hearing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Father, you have seen this seed. If it is really popularized, then as Fengzi said, the Tang dynasty will really not lack food anymore. This is a good thing. How about? Do you know that the Tang dynasty really can't afford to waste this thing at this time? Do you know how much food we have now? Gone. They were all gone. Even the grain stored in the prefecture has been released. But this is still not enough to satisfy the people of the entire Tang dynasty. What do you think will happen if Fengzi's set of things are brought out at this time?" Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Father, that's where you're wrong. Actually, Fengzi has already said that although this method wastes food, the filtered food can still be eaten. This doesn't mean that all of it can be wasted. Furthermore, look at the quality of the seeds. Think about the pigs that Fengzi mentioned before." Instantly, only then did everyone remember the 300,000 pigs that had rushed up the mountain. At this time, hearing Li Chengqian mention it, Cheng Yaojin asked in surprise, "Didn't the pig's gizzard already finish?" "That's right. Speaking of those pigs, didn't Fengzi slaughter all of them in the food factory at the foot of the mountain last time? Why are you bringing this up now? Yu Shinan and the others didn't care about these things. It could be said that after Zhang Feng brought those pigs up the mountain, they didn't pay attention to this matter anymore. In addition, last time Zhang Feng went to slaughter those pigs down the mountain with great fanfare. After that, they didn't pay attention to this matter anymore. They only knew that Zhang Feng, Li Chengqian, and the others made a lot of achievements in Chang'an city, and then the same thing happened in the whole Tang dynasty. For a while, because of the locust disaster, more than half of the pigs that were brought over from Tubo disappeared in an instant. At this time, when they heard Li Chengqian mention it, they couldn't help but be shocked. Ouyang Sun hurriedly asked, "Tell us in detail. Did Fengzi start to do this thing again? Then what's the matter with the pigs?" Li Shimin was also a little surprised. Li Chengqian glanced at them and said with a stiff face, "Do you still remember why Fengzi asked Old Gao and the others to go up the mountain?" After asking this question, in an instant, Li Shimin and the others thought of the purpose of Old Gao and the others to go up the mountain. It was all for the sake of baiting pigs. Could it be for a while? They couldn't help but look strange. They looked at Zhang Feng, who was lying on the chair in the villa behind them, and asked, "Aren't the pigs all gone?" At this time, "What do you mean by this?" Li Chengqian said speechlessly, "Although the pigs on the mountain are gone, do you still remember the butcher? Zheng Tufu. The one who used to live in the gray building with old Gao. That butcher instantly reminded Li Shimin and the others. They seemed to have also found that they hadn't seen him for a long time, so they asked in surprise, "Qianer, tell me this matter in detail." Then Li Chengqian told him everything about how the pigs were selected for breeding, and how Zheng Tufu went down the mountain to promote this new breed of pig that did not have a bad smell, and how they could grow 200 catties of fat pigs in 3 months, as well as the pig feed. He told him everything in detail. This time, not to mention Li Shimin, even Yu Shinan and the others looked at each other with a dumbfounded expression. This matter seemed to be a small matter. But what did this mean? In the short span of 2 months, Zhang Feng had already changed the breed of pig that everyone despised. And now, although they hadn't seen that kind of pig, but thinking about it carefully, it seemed that the pork they ate now didn't have a bad smell. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng's villa in surprise and said, "I finally understand why this guy asked me for a carpenter so mysteriously. I see. Chapter 1455. Before. They really didn't understand why Zhang Feng would spend so much effort to optimize and screen the seeds. In their opinion, as long as they used this phosphate fertilizer, even if it was a little thin, it would still be able to make the majority of the Zhuang family survive. Moreover, although some of the seeds were shriveled, they would still be able to survive with the help of the phosphate fertilizer. But now, it was Zhang Feng who single-handedly handled the matter of the pigs. At the beginning, he bought a lot of pigs, chickens, and ducks from Tubo Turks and other places to help kill the locusts. Then, after the locusts were killed, these things became a burden. Then he opened a food factory on the mountain. Zhang Feng tweaked all the stinky pork into something edible. Even the people in the court were basically using this kind of fresh thing. This was all because the Tangs at this time were basically tired of eating horse meat, donkey meat, and mutton meat. And this kind of thing, which they usually despised, suddenly became a popular food. This made people want to have a lively and fresh time. There was also a kind of magical trading method. They didn't want money but only food. This kind of strange method was simply unprecedented. At this time, it appeared in Chang'an and instantly attracted a large number of fans. This was all because of the amazing effect of the pork and the daily Chinese medicine. Even in Li Shimin's imperial kitchen, this dish was a must-have dish every day. This pork was fat but not greasy, unlike beef and mutton which was hot and dry after eating. Moreover, after eating it, one's entire body would be smelled of something fishy. In their cognition, the pork, which had always been more stinky than beef and mutton, had become so delicious. And the most important thing was, this thing was actually so cheap that it was half dead. Even ordinary people could afford to eat it. Unconsciously, this thing had already made people think that this pork originally tasted like that. There were also rumors that this pork trotter had the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin. As long as one bought the prescription of Dr. Sun in the Chang'an hotel and boiled it, it would work. In an instant, the whole pork directly became popular in the Tang dynasty. Of course, everyone understood. Who was divine Dr. Sun? Would he lower himself to develop a beauty soup for such a trivial matter? This was definitely Zhang Feng's method, without a doubt. At this moment, when Li Chengqian mentioned it, everyone suddenly realized that there was indeed such a thing. Now most of the butchers in the food factory had changed professions. Furthermore, the river water was no longer blood red like it used to be. At this moment, everyone instantly understood that all of this had been planned by this kid for a long time. It was just that they had been paying attention to other things. Regarding this food thing, it seemed they had long stopped caring about it. Come to think of it, Zhang Feng hadn't personally cooked for them during this period of time, except for the grilled fish last time. At the thought of this, everyone looked at Zhang Feng in the room at the same time. Moreover, the most important thing was, at this time, no matter how much he said, it would be a wild guess. Rather than that, he might as well ask Zhang Feng about it. At this moment, following the sound of horse hooves, everyone couldn't help but stop in their tracks. They suddenly looked over and saw Ma Xinliang rushing over with a bulging cloth bag on his back. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up. When Ma Xinliang arrived, Li Chengqian hurriedly stopped Ma Xinliang and asked, "What's the matter? Did you go to buy land?" Before Li Chengqian finished asking, Yu Qigong asked directly. Ma Xinliang naturally recognized these people, especially that Yu Qigongcheng who bit the golden bull and entered the Tower of Dusk. How could the people who were with them be ordinary people? Moreover, several great scholars were here, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He hurriedly said, "Yes, I did go to buy land under the order of the dean." They secretly said, "As expected." Feng Xuanling's eyes flashed and he asked, "Did you buy the land at the city gate?" In an instant, everyone's eyes were fixed on Ma Xinliang. This guy was a veteran who retired from the battlefield and the instructor of the Liangzhou garrison. If he didn't know the purpose of this land, Li Shimin would really kill him. Seeing this, Ma Xinliang naturally knew the importance of this place. At this time, when he heard Feng Xuanling's question, he hurriedly said, "Although the dean asked for that land, I know how extraordinary it is. No matter how bold I am, I don't dare to buy that land. Moreover, Master Niu directly skipped that land and gave us the land from the Shirley Slope to the Shao Mountain." Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others breathed a sigh of relief, and their hanging hearts slowly relaxed. Seeing this, Yu Qigong said, "You don't have to go in for such a small matter. I'll go in and tell Fengzi. Just give me the land deed. Here." Although Ma Xinliang was hesitant, he still carefully handed the bag on his back to Yu Qigong. Although the bag wasn't big, it was quite heavy. He asked in surprise, "What's in it? It's so heavy." "It's all land deeds." Ha! Hearing this, everyone's expression froze. Yu Qigong waited in surprise and asked, "Tell me honestly, how much land did you buy?" "Well, not much, just 300 hectares. In an instant, Li Shimin's vision went black. He staggered and fell to the ground. Chapter 1456. In an instant, everyone's face changed dramatically. Niu Jindao quickly grabbed Li Shimin and asked in horror, "You said 300 mu?" "Master Niu, it's 300 mu." Buzz. In an instant, there was a buzzing sound in everyone's head. Damn it! This guy is dishonest. For a moment, the few of them were even more jealous. What was the emperor's attitude when they bought the land? He was afraid that they would buy too much land. Now this guy bought all the land he could buy. Now they felt comfortable. If the emperor didn't give them an explanation, when they went back, they would secretly buy the land. Otherwise, they would feel uneasy. At this time, Li Shimin was also frightened by the thick stack of land deeds. Before, he had made it clear in the court that no one was allowed to buy land privately. Now the more land he bought, the less land he could get. In addition, he also knew the benefits of phosphate fertilizer. At this time, when he saw the wheat sprouts promoted by phosphate fertilizer, he knew what this land meant. Once this thing could be implemented, it would definitely have an unprecedented effect. Only by controlling more land would he have more food in his hands. When the time came, no matter if there was a disaster or a war, he could still use it with a wave of his hand. Rather than collecting food, it would be safer to have the goods in his hands. Therefore, Li Shimin's purpose of coming to Shao Mountain this time was to directly issue an imperial edict after confirming this matter, that no one was allowed to buy and sell land privately. But this guy, Li Shimin felt a little stuffy in his chest. Who was Zhang Feng? No matter how much land he wanted, he would give it to him with a wave of his hand. But it was different now. At this time, most of the people in the court were watching, and there was a pair of invisible big hands manipulating everything. At this time, if the news that Zhang Feng bought land was spread out, and there were so many of them, then, even if he issued an imperial edict, what was the use of it? At the very least, the people in the imperial court and those present here might not listen to them. Li Shimin took a deep breath. Today, he suddenly felt that it was an absolutely wrong decision to come to the mountain. At least, he should issue an imperial edict before going up the mountain. Alas! Li Shimin rubbed his forehead and waved his hand to let Ma Xinliang leave. Then with Niu Jindao's help he slowly walked to Zhang Feng's villa. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, who was supported on his back, in astonishment. Looking at his pale face, he asked, "What's wrong with you? Why are you like this after a while?" "Let's not talk about me first." Li Shimin rubbed his head and said, "Let me ask you first, what good thing did you do? Here's the 300 hectares of land you bought. Tell me why you bought these lands. Are you trying to rebel? Zhang Feng heard this and immediately covered Li Shimon's mouth. He said, Lao Li, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say this. If this matter is spread out, you'll be harming us. You know how to be afraid, kid? Yu Shernan was a little speechless. He said, Tell me first, what do you want to do with these 300 hectares of land? This matter will definitely alarm the emperor and all the civil and military officials. You should think clearly about this matter. When the time comes, let Lao Li go to Lord Zhongsun tonight, and also Li Xiaogong, Prince Li. Maybe there's still a chance to turn things around. As he spoke, Yu Shernan kicked Du Ruhui, who was next to him. Under his gaze, Du Ruhui said unsteadily, As far as I know, the emperor said that he was going to draft a decree forbidding private purchases of land. Although I don't know why he hasn't issued a decree yet, many people know about this. If you do this, you'll undoubtedly give those people a reason to criticize you. What if during the morning court tomorrow, someone mentions this to you, then? Moreover, you're now a viscount and the chancellor of White Deer College. Although you don't hold a position in the court, you're still a fifth-rank official and receive a salary from the court. In the laws of the Tang dynasty, it's already mentioned that an official in the court, unless it's a reward from the emperor, under normal circumstances, they can't. No. Zhang Feng also instantly understood that the matter this time was serious. No wonder Lao Li was so scared. So it was because of this matter? He absolutely didn't dare to admit this at this moment. Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his mouth and say, You still want to quibble at this time? Zhang Feng shook his head and said with righteous indignation, What are you all thinking? Don't you know what I said at the meeting just now? I said that I want all the students of White Deer College to farm. How much land can be farmed on the mountain? That's why I used my own money to buy everything that can be bought. Now it seems like 300 hectares is a lot. But have you thought about how our land will be given to all the students? They will all be distributed to the students. If each student gets 1 mu of land, then there will be more than 3,000 students. In addition to the many people on the mountain, there will be at least 5,000 people, right? These people, do a good calculation. How much land can these people get? Chapter 1457. Zhang Feng's words. Instantly, everyone was frightened. At this moment, no one knew what to say. If what Zhang Feng said was true, then there really weren't many. But at this moment, Zhang Feng's words made everyone feel more and more uncomfortable. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Li Shimin also knew that if it was purely with words, even he couldn't win against Zhang Feng. He could only smile bitterly and say, Come on, you've been setting a trap from the beginning, haven't you? Zhang Feng raised his hands aggrievedly and said, I'm innocent, I'm really innocent. How could I have so many thoughts? I'm very innocent, okay? The old Xiaocai and Li Gang, who were drinking tea, couldn't help but spit out the tea in their mouths when they heard this. Originally, the old Xiaocai already knew Zhang Feng's nature. Now that he heard Zhang Feng say this, he must know that the emperor couldn't gain any advantage, so he didn't say anything. But now that they heard Zhang Feng say this, the two of them couldn't sit still anymore. The old Xiaocai sighed and said, Alas! I'm old. This matter has nothing to do with the academy. I'll go back and sleep for a while. I still have classes in the afternoon. Seeing this, Li Gang hurriedly got up and followed the old Xiaocai to leave. The next moment, Yu Shernan and the others also found excuses to leave, leaving only Li Shimin and the others. Seeing this, Li Chengqian also took the opportunity to slip away. Seeing this, Li Shimin waved his hand speechlessly and said, That's enough, you brat. I'm hungry. Go and get me something to eat first. Later, we'll talk about the business. Zhang Feng was also a little hungry at this moment. He ate a meal full of salt at noon. How could he be full? As soon as they went upstairs, they were all spat out by their throats. At this time, when Li Shimin said that, they instantly felt hungry. They hurriedly said, Okay, you guys wait first. I'll be back soon. I'll show you my skills today. Li Shimin watched as Zhang Feng went into the kitchen. With a serious expression, he said, Don't even think about the farmland. Let's talk about the phosphate fertilizer first. What do you think about phosphate fertilizer? At this moment, only then did everyone regain their senses. Wei Zheng pondered for a while with a dignified expression and said, "Second master, I think this is possible. Moreover, I just talked with Dr. Sun and confirmed that the yellow ginger is indeed so fast because of the use of phosphate fertilizer. Moreover, the wheat sprouts that young Master Li brought just now already explained many problems. Therefore, I think this will work." Yu Qigong and the others nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Li Shimin said, "If that's the case, then the most difficult part of this matter is this thing. Others can't see it, so how do we make the people accept this thing? This matter was the most difficult thing to do." Although they approved of this thing, the promotion of this thing didn't mean that it could be done with an imperial edict. It needed the people to accept it themselves. This was the most difficult part. At this time, all the people had deep-rooted traditional thinking. Every time a new thing appeared, it would cause a big uproar. The people's ability to accept it was not good enough. However, this thing couldn't be done. Even with the imperial edict, there was no way. For this matter, even Empress Zhongsun discussed with him for 3 nights, but they couldn't come up with a solution. At this time, Zhongsun Wuji and the others were also silent. This thing was very good, and this matter had been spread out early in the morning. However, after the matter of the Tang family was over, this matter was still spreading. However, there were both people who believed and people who didn't believe in it. Therefore, at this time, everyone was also very worried. If they still relied on public opinion, it would be unrealistic. The people were people who wouldn't act until they saw a rabbit. Without solid evidence, no one would make a decision easily. Moreover, it was such an important matter. This was a big matter that would determine whether they could survive the next year, and whether they would starve next year. At this time, Niu Jindao floated around. Seeing that no one spoke, he said in a muffled voice, "Second master, I think this matter should be handled by Fengzi himself. After all, this series of things was done by him. At this time he should have a solution. Instead of blindly pondering here, why don't we ask him?" At this thought, everyone nodded and pushed this matter to Zhang Feng. After all, this was the only way to take responsibility. Even if things went wrong, they wouldn't take any risks. How could they let go of such a good thing that satisfied both sides? The most important thing was, what they didn't like the most was to burn their brains. How could Li Shimin not know what these people were up to? He just didn't expose them. In fact, he had this idea long ago, but he didn't want to rely on Zhang Feng for everything. Therefore, he thought that if he could do it himself, he would do it himself. After all, at that time, even if he bragged in front of Zhang Feng, he wouldn't be so passive. At this time, a tempting smell of meat came from the kitchen door. With a crunching sound, Zhang Feng rushed out with a large amount of steaming hot dishes. "Red braised pork is here." Chapter 1458. Red braised pork? In an instant, Li Shimin and the others' eyes were attracted by the bright red thing on Zhang Feng's plate. It even had a sparkling luster. As the plate fell, everyone's eyes were fixed on the fist-sized piece of meat in the dustpan-sized plate in a daze. "Well, Feng, is this the red braised pork you mentioned?" Cheng Yaojin's eyes widened. As he spoke, he couldn't help but pick up a piece from the plate with his chopsticks, and was about to stuff it into his mouth. When Wei Zheng saw this, he was stunned and coughed. Cheng Yaojin suddenly came to his senses, and hurriedly handed the fist-sized piece of meat to Li Shimin. Li Shimin twitched the corner of his mouth. He looked at Wei Zheng with a strange look and said with a smile, "Old Wei, try it first." Seeing this, Zhang Feng instantly made a strange sound from between his teeth. "Well, I feel that you all dislike it." Cheng Yaojin smiled and said, "What are you talking about?" How could Zhang Feng not know what these people were thinking? They were obviously looking at the strange color of the red braised meat. Moreover, it was so big and fat. They definitely did not want to eat it. He couldn't help but sigh. Damn it. When did they become so crafty? In the past, these people would even eat the big pieces of white meat without salt after they were cooked in water. How did they become like this? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and didn't bother to care. "It's up to you. If you don't want to eat, I'll eat more." While speaking, Zhang Feng turned and went into the kitchen. He took out a few bowls of millet rice again, and started to eat and drink. The meat was very fat. Zhang Feng chose the best pork belly from the pig. There was no white sugar in this era, so Zhang Feng could only use that kind of native honey to color it. Then he added soy sauce to color it. So at this time, although it looked bright red, there was also some caramel color and a black color. The rich oily feeling of the honey and the fat of the pork instantly made the meat look full of fat. At this time, at the dining table. In addition, everyone had doubts before. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng eating so happily and the tempting smell of the red braised pork itself, how could they resist? Li Shimin saw that no one was eating. He looked at the meat in the bowl, and then at Wei Zheng. Wei Zheng couldn't even pretend not to see it. He had to obey. From Li Shimin's bowl, he respectfully picked up a piece of meat the size of a fist, and put it into his bowl. After looking at it for a long time, he carefully took a bite. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Zhang Feng's cooking skills. Every time, the food that Zhang Feng made was unparalleled in the world. However, only this time, the meat looked greasy and unbearable. Cheng Yaojin couldn't wait. He was very hungry. At this time, when he saw Zhang Feng eating happily and the temptation of the meat's fragrance, before Wei Zheng ate, Cheng Yaojin picked up a piece and ate it in big mouthfuls. For a moment, everyone's eyes couldn't help but fall on Cheng Yaojin's beard, and the oil that dripped down from his beard onto his chest. They were stunned. At first, everyone saw that Cheng Yaojin was eating seriously with a frown on his face. They thought that this thing was unpalatable. But slowly, they found a problem. This guy didn't even finish one piece. There were already 7 or 8 pieces piled up in his bowl. Niu Jinda and Yu Qigong, who were sitting on both sides of Cheng Yaojin, were the first to find the problem. Seeing Cheng Yaojin eating so happily, they couldn't help but start eating as well. In an instant, the 3 of them ate quickly. Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Whether it was Dr. Sun or the imperial physician, they had told him to avoid meat and fish. But at this time, seeing the 3 of them eating without a trace of table manners, he was eager to eat. Seeing this, Cheng Yaojin hurriedly said, "Second master, I've eaten. This thing is delicious." Li Shimin, who was about to eat, heard this. How could he eat? With a sigh, he picked up the ordinary food on the table and ate. Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at Li Shimin with some surprise and asked, "Lao Li, are you really not going to try it?" While speaking, Zhang Feng took a bite of the red braised meat. The grease in Li Shimin's eyes and under Zhang Feng's bite splashed everywhere. Li Shimin's scalp tingled. He twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "I'm not feeling well recently. You shouldn't eat too greasy things. Eat more." Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin suspiciously, and then looked at Wei Zheng and others who lowered their heads to eat the red braised meat. He didn't bother to ask. He lowered his head and competed with them. Li Shimin was so angry that he couldn't bear it. However, at this point, everyone could only eat while persuading Li Shimin not to eat meat. Li Shimin was very angry. During the meal, Li Shimin was very unhappy. Fortunately, in the end, Zhang Feng still had a conscience. He picked his teeth and took out a plate of red braised meat from the kitchen again. He glanced at Li Shimin and said, "Don't worry and eat. Although this thing looks a little greasy, you can try it. It's definitely not as greasy as you think." Seeing this, Li Shimin was still a little suspicious, but he still picked up a piece with suspicion. In an instant, the rich fragrance in his mouth made Li Shimin sink in an instant. For a moment, Li Shimin was very angry. It turned out that these people's persuasion was not true. They just wanted to eat more. Anger. Sometimes it could really turn into a ruthless fighting force. Li Shimin didn't eat now. He directly moved the plate of red braised meat in front of him. He tasted it slowly and tasted the wine carefully. Cheng Yaojin and others were about to go crazy. They didn't stand on ceremony, and went directly to Zhang Feng's kitchen to search. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly blocked the kitchen door and said, "Just eat enough. Aren't you tired of it?" Cheng Yaojin wiped the grease at the corner of his mouth, and was about to push Zhang Feng aside. He laughed and said, "How can we have enough of this thing? I say, if you have more, quickly take it out. I'm going to faint from hunger." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "No. If you want to eat, wait until next time." Chapter 1459. After the meal, everyone was still longing for more. They didn't feel anything when they were eating, but when they stopped, the taste of oil coming out of their throats was really uncomfortable. After drinking a pot of tea, only then did they pick their teeth and rub their bellies. They lay in Zhang Feng's living room and smoked as they looked at Zhang Feng, sizing him up from head to toe. Zhang Feng felt a little scared and asked quickly, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Li Shimin smiled and said, "Nothing. I just want to ask, how do you plan to deal with the phosphate fertilizer incident?" The alarm in Zhang Feng's heart instantly went off. He didn't know what was going on. Now when he saw Lao Li smile, he felt scared. He didn't know why. Maybe he was really cheated badly? He looked at the others and saw that they all had the same expression. Zhang Feng instantly felt that this matter was far from being that simple. But it had already happened. What could he say? He could only say subconsciously, "Actually, I've said this before. The people of the Tang family can apply what they have learned. How can we forget this old profession?" This, Li Shimin's expression froze. Feng Xianling hurriedly said, "It's not like that. Although everything can be tested now, the people are not fools. Besides, this phosphate fertilizer is related to whether the people will have enough to eat next year or not. So we went to check. At this time, not to mention other places, even in Chang'an, although most people believe it, the people who intend to use this are very few. They just don't believe in this thing. They only believe in what has been passed down from generation to generation." Zhang Feng was also a little surprised. This thing, even an imperial edict, would not work. It was the same reason that people in Guangzhou were not allowed to eat noodles. Could you prevent them from eating noodles all day long? What a joke. Since the emperor of Hanwu, no one dared to do so for many years. Now that the emperor had opened up a way to spread the word, how could they do such a thing? Just like the noodle food, the phosphate fertilizer could be popularized. He had to come up with a perfect plan. Otherwise, what was the point of doing this? With this in mind, Zhang Feng asked, "Why don't we do it ourselves first? After the spring harvest, won't the people all believe us?" Speaking of which, Li Shimin instantly lost his composure. Not to mention that he was not a businessman. Even if he was destined not to do such a thing. At that time, the people would be starving. Who would buy things? Even if they did, they would only buy food to fill their stomachs. Once a person went crazy, they would not care about anything else. Another thing was that Zhang Feng kept saying that there would be a locust plague next year. Although he did not believe it, he had to believe it. At the very least, there was no conclusive evidence to prove that there would be no locust plague next year. Because the locust eggs in the fields, the ones dug out from the imperial garden and thrown into the lake to feed the fish, and the fried locust eggs that he was eating now, all indicated that next year's locust plague would be even more terrifying than this year's. He had asked Yuan Tiangang for advice on this matter more than once. Yuan Tiangang also spent 30 days to calculate that there would be a catastrophe next year. Therefore, at this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin shook his head and said, No. You also said that there will be a locust plague next year. This autumn planting is related to the people in the world. If we are the only ones planting, won't we become the target of public criticism?" Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin with some surprise and said, "Yo, I didn't know that Lao Li could think so much." Li Shimin's eyelids twitched. He knew that this kid was insulting him, but for the people in the world, what could he do? He had to say, "In fact, this matter is very easy to understand. Don't insult me. I am a businessman. My purpose is to make money. Think about it. If the people can live and work in peace and contentment, doesn't it mean that their lives will be more prosperous? Once they are rich, won't we earn more? If everyone revolves around 3 meals a day, who will have the mood to buy and sell things? Who are we going to sell our stuff to then? Who will have the strength to work for us?" Zhang Feng heard this and nodded, but then he asked with a smile, "Was the braised pork just now delicious?" Zhang Feng's brain circuit made several people's heads unable to wrap around it in an instant. They looked at Zhang Feng with a confused face. Zhang Feng saw this and said, "What I mean is, was the braised pork just now delicious?" Li Shimin couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng meant, but to be honest, The braised pork was indeed delicious. He nodded and said, "The taste is good, but does it have anything to do with what we are discussing at this time?" "Yes." Zhang Feng nodded and pointed to several people and said, "Just now before you ate, did you shift the blame to each other?" Only Old Chen didn't say anything and chose to believe me. Why is that? That's because Old Chen was hungry and really believed that I wouldn't harm him. Also, this is pork. You have eaten it before. In addition, I am your brother, so you believe me. However, you Lao Li Old Fong, both of you hesitated for a long time before starting to eat. Also, when you were eating, you kept persuading Lao Li to eat less. What do you mean by that? Actually, you are right. This thing looks really greasy. And for Lao Li, it's really not good to eat too much of it. You have been living a luxurious life all year round, so naturally, you will more or less have some taboos. In addition, a few days ago, I happened to hear Old Sun mention that your body should avoid greasy food. But in the end you still couldn't resist the desire for good food, so, Zhang Feng sighed helplessly and said, "This is equivalent to the current situation. Even if you believe in it, there are still many people who have a doubtful attitude towards this thing. How do you think this thing should be promoted?" Chapter 1460. Zhang Feng used the meal to explain the current situation based on everyone's actions. In an instant, Li Shimin and the others were shocked. The current situation was indeed as Zhang Feng said. Although many people chose to believe it, it was all based on Zhang Feng's accumulated reputation, Zhang Feng's good reputation, and Sun Simiao's incident on the street of Chang'an. Even so, the inherent thinking that had been inherited for thousands of years was still not easily surpassed. This meant that it would take a long time for this phosphate fertilizer to be popularized. But at this time, did Li Shimin still have time? No. So at this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say so, Li Shimin became more anxious. To put it bluntly, this was actually a contest between the common people, a confrontation with the traditional thinking and habits of hundreds and thousands of years. What Zhang Feng said before was actually right. As long as the food they planted was taken out, it would be enough. This matter could be easily solved. But now, did Li Shimin have a choice? Did he still have time to make a choice? There was nothing else. So at this time, Li Shimin was more anxious. He couldn't wait. At that time when the people of the entire Tang dynasty were not there, Li Shimin's eyebrows were so deep that they were like fried dough twists. He walked around in the living room and thought. After a long time Li Shimin said, "Fengzi, we really don't have a little idea. If you have a way, you can tell us. And just now we have discussed for a long time. If we use the previous method to do it, words alone are useless. Even if we ask for an imperial edict, it will be useless. Think about it, every citizen has their own way of thinking. This phosphate fertilizer is a little unimaginable. How can these people change their way of thinking in such a short period of time?" Alas! Everyone was silent. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji said with some hesitation, "Didn't young Master Li bring the malt just now? If we get some malt and take it to Chang'an city and let the people have a look, will it?" After that, Zhang Sun Wuji stared at Li Shimin and Zhang Feng. Seeing that they seemed to be thinking, he hurriedly said, "This is just my guess. You can take it as a joke." "No." Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Your method is really good, but it will waste my 1 mu of grain." Li Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard that. Yes. Why didn't I think of such a simple thing? Look, Fengzi, if we waste the wheat in the field, although it seems to be a waste now, as long as we take the sprouts to the emperor or go to the political announcing palace, there will be a turn for the better. At that time, we can put the wheat in the field in a frame, and take it to Chang'an city to let the people have a look at it. Won't that work? And the most important thing is that these things will not be lost. When the time comes, wheat seedlings will grow. It's just that they will grow in the frame of Chang'an city instead of in the field. This will stimulate the sales of phosphate fertilizer. What do you think? Feng Xianling glanced at the emperor and Zhang Feng with some hesitation, and then quietly glanced at Du Ruhui, who was calm and collected, and said, "Old Du, do you think this will work?" Du Ruhui glanced at them and smiled faintly. Fengzi has already planned it. Why are you and I worrying about it? Feng Xianling was stunned. What do you mean? It's very simple. That is, today during the meal, Zhang Feng has already thought of a countermeasure. This red braised meat, do you think Fengzi will give it to us for free? Although this meat looks ordinary, we will only know its taste after eating it. Just like the food Fengzi made before, at the beginning, it was so ordinary because we were used to it. Even if Fengzi made something, it would feel ordinary. But what does it mean to outsiders? This is a factor that can completely change the food culture of the entire Chang'an. So this red braised meat is actually Fengzi's way of telling us that he has a plan? Feng Xianling asked in surprise. Du Ruhui narrowed his eyes and nodded. He looked at Zhang Feng with mixed feelings and said, "That's right." Actually, Zhang Feng had already thought of this seed long ago. He wanted to spread it out. After all, he bought so much land. Naturally, he wanted to let the people of Tonghui Lane plant it. However, he was hesitant about whether he should do so. He didn't have a fixed number. That's why he wanted to use the red braised pork to talk about Second Master's thoughts. Yes. In an instant, Feng Xianling suddenly understood and whispered with Du Ruhui. The next moment, Cheng Yaojin and others also joined in the whisper. Li Shimin and Zhang Feng had noticed, but the problem now was that Zhang Feng was still hesitating whether to destroy the wheat in that mu of land. After all, that was where his hope lay. Once there was a problem, all the plans would be ruined. That was why Zhang Feng was so hesitant. At this time, seeing Feng Xianling and others, although they could faintly hear some, they still couldn't hear clearly. After looking at Li Shimin, Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Actually, I have another plan, but I'm a little worried. What if it fails?" Chapter 1461. Li Shimin was also anxious. The longer the matter was delayed, the shorter the autumn planting time would be. Seeing that Zhang Feng was still hesitating, he hurriedly asked, "Tell us about it. There are so many of us here, surely we can think of a way, right?" Seeing that Li Shimin was a little anxious at this time, Feng Xianling and the others also hurriedly shut up and tried to persuade Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng then said hesitantly, "Then I'll say it." "Say it. There are no outsiders here." Seeing that, Zhang Feng said, "Actually, this matter is very easy to deal with. I plan to put all the wheat in transparent glass jars. I don't need a lot, just a few seeds. The main thing is to expose them so that others can see them. Secondly, I want to settle the matter of the seeds first. As for the phosphorus fertilizer, it's actually possible to do it later. As you all know, there are as many locust eggs as there are hairs on a cow. This is also the reason why I want to cover the wheat seeds with a layer of grass ash. As long as the people know the function of screening the seeds and the benefits, the next step is to make the pesticide. When the time comes, I plan to add water and dilute the phosphate fertilizer in the water. The effect is actually the same. This way, even if the autumn planting season is over, the wheat seeds will not be affected at all." Zhang Feng actually had this idea for a long time. Regarding the pesticide, after Dr. Sun went up the mountain last time, he had been working on it with Dr. Sunday. However, he really did not know how to promote this pesticide matter. After all, this thing was only to prevent the locust eggs in the field. No one knew what would happen. Therefore, until now, Zhang Feng had been thinking. He originally wanted to wait for Li Gan and the others to finish the water wheel installation before seeing the situation. At this time, Old Sun said this idea. This made Zhang Feng even more hesitant. After all, the pesticide matter was very important. If it was not handled well, anyone who drank a mouthful would die. In addition, the hidden danger of the phosphate fertilizer poisoning incident had not been completely eliminated. If this thing appeared again, it would definitely be used against them. However, Zhang Feng didn't notice that when he was talking about the pesticide, Li Shimin and the others' eyes almost popped out. After Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng and asked, "Fengzi, what is this pesticide that you are talking about?" "It's a medicine that can kill locusts. It's a medicine that can solve the disease of wheat from the roots. It's the same as the medicine we take when we're sick. However, this thing is poisonous. I'm afraid it will cause big trouble when the time comes. That's why I'm hesitating. Should I get this thing out?" Zhang Feng thought for a while and rubbed his forehead in distress. F***CK, let's not talk about this for now. Let's deal with the seeds and phosphate fertilizer first. Then I'll ask elder son about the pesticide. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Li Shimin made Zhang Feng dumbfounded. At this time, seeing that Zhang Feng didn't want to talk about it, everyone didn't ask anything. They could only wait for Zhang Feng to talk about it himself. Moreover, the phosphate fertilizer matter had not been dealt with yet. Even if the pesticide was hyped up to the sky, it would be useless. Fengzi, then tell me. The most important thing is to deal with the seeds first, or the phosphate fertilizer. Yes, you should come up with a plan first. There are so many of us. We will definitely think of something. You can't just wait like this. We have to come up with a plan, right? Whether it works or not, we'll only know after we try it first. Zhang Feng thought for a while and finally rubbed his head. Stop arguing. Can we analyze it first? Zhang Feng was really annoyed. The people of this era, regarding these things, were simply, this was just the beginning. What if his science and technology department wanted to do something else in the future? Wouldn't that pierce through the sky? It was no longer a matter of promoting phosphate fertilizers. The problem now was how to make the people believe in this thing. The potato matter would start after the Chinese New Year next year. At this time, the Tang dynasty only had corn, which was millet, and wheat. These things were too simple. It was not difficult to increase the production. They just had to improve the quality of the seeds, and then screen out the good ones. Then they would cultivate them. It was the same principle as cultivating good breeding pigs. These things would eventually be spread out and made available to the people. Otherwise, why would he make these things? Plant them himself? Wouldn't that be tiring? In fact, according to Zhang Feng's temper, he really didn't want to make these things available. In this pedantic era, making these things was simply courting death. Why should he waste so much effort? In the end, it was nothing. Since the Han dynasty, there were so many good things such as the plow, the water wheel, and so on. So many good things. These things were slowly worn out in the long river of time. The root cause was that people in this era were too pedantic. Otherwise, how could it be like this? The era was developing, but because of the monopoly of the aristocratic families, the pedantic of the people, and the lack of attention of the people in the current dynasty, such a sad thing happened. This was the case at this time. If he came up with the plan to produce more than 2,000 caddies of potatoes per moo and the super rice, wouldn't the world be turned upside down? Therefore, Zhang Feng was certain that if he wanted to change all of this, he had to change their thinking first. Otherwise, everything would be in vain. It wasn't the fault of the common people, nor was it Zhang Feng's fault, nor was it the fault of the great Tang's nobles. It was this era that was sick. If he wanted to change all of this, he had to cure it first. However, what could Zhang Feng do to cure this era? Chapter 1462. The era was sick. This was something that no one could quickly cure. This could only be changed gradually from the most fundamental point. For example, if Zhang Feng really produced potatoes now, not to mention others, even Lao Li and the others would subconsciously think that Zhang Feng was crazy. Not to mention others. In this era, in an era where one could only produce 100 caddies per moo, who would believe that there was something that could produce 2,000 to 3,000 caddies per moo? Even ghosts wouldn't believe it, right? This was the drawback of this era. Only when this thing was really accepted by people slowly, such as this phosphate fertilizer, could the people really see its practical use, and the matter of the seeds. Only when it was accepted by them, then everything would happen. Otherwise, Zhang Feng was very clear about the principle of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm. As for whether other people in this era knew about it, he wasn't sure. In short, everything could only be done with practical actions. That would be the best medicine. The best medicine to cure this era. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others were also silent, but in everyone's mind, they were also thinking. They weren't real businessmen. For this matter, they would think more deeply. Zhang Feng had always been indifferent to this matter. He didn't care about it, but when it was really important he would show seriousness. However, they really hadn't seen a situation like today. For example, the gunpowder, the firearms, and so on. Zhang Feng was always so calm. When did he become so serious today? At this moment, Zhang Feng was silent for a long time. The cigarette almost burned the skin off his mouth. Then he said, "For this matter, I think that the seeds and the phosphate fertilizer can be used at the same time. First, we can use public opinion to create public opinion. It's best to send people to bring the method of screening the seeds and the phosphate fertilizer to the various prefectures to publicize. Then, I will ask people to make some glass bottles and get some of the sprouted wheat." Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin hurriedly sat beside Zhang Feng and asked, "Fengzi, are you going to use the two-step method?" In fact, the phosphate fertilizer incident has already caused a sensation in Chang'an and the surrounding prefectures. However, there is no physical evidence, so Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, "Yes." But with the previous public opinion, even the person who spread the rumors didn't believe it himself. How could he make others believe it? Weren't you guys asking why I bought so much land? Actually, there is some selfishness in this aspect, but most of it is because at this time, many people's eyes are focused on the mountain. If we don't do something, what will the people think? Now that we're buying land, it's only natural that people will notice. When Li Shimin heard this, he was instantly surprised. Could it be that all of this was your plan? You mean, buying land? How could there be so many excuses? Li Shimin also wanted to know the real purpose of Zhang Feng's purchase of these lands. At this time, when Zhang Feng mentioned it, Li Shimin instantly felt that something big was going to happen. After all, this matter, if he didn't handle it well today and didn't understand the details, there would definitely be people who would use this matter to impeach Zhang Feng in the morning assembly tomorrow. Seeing this, Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and said, "Yes, it's what you think. I'm buying land. Do you really think I want to farm? Do you think I, Zhang Feng, am someone who likes to farm? If Zhang Feng was a farmer, then he wouldn't be so lazy. This guy, to put it bluntly, was a lazy guy. He was so lazy that he didn't even eat well. If he put his heart into teaching others, would he farm? Go and beg. If anyone really believed it, then they must be bewitched." Li Shimin pointed to the sky outside with a headache and said, "Hurry up, it's going to be dark soon. How am I going to enter the city?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he said, "Actually, this matter is also very troublesome for me. After all, now we're facing all the people and the pair of people behind the scenes. No one knows what's waiting for us. At this time, the best way is to take 3 steps. The first step is to let people take the seeds and spread rumors in the city. After all, at this time, the city has naturally been abuzz with the news that I'm buying land, but no one knows why I'm buying land. It's best to spread the news about the seeds now. Then when these people spread the rumors, they will definitely secretly buy land. Do you believe it? As long as they take action, what does that mean? It means that the matter is confirmed. After all, these people are all from Chang'an City. They see each other often and naturally know many people. Previously, they were only shouting slogans, but people realized that they didn't do anything behind the scenes. How many people do you think will believe it?" Li Shimin frowned slightly, but his eyes lit up in an instant. Zhang Feng is right. Why didn't I think of it? If I had thought of this in the first place, then at this time, Li Shimin said enthusiastically, "Hurry up and say it." Zhang Feng leaned back on the recliner and stretched comfortably. Then he said, "This thing is a psychological effect. This time, we don't need them to say anything, we need them to do something." What is this called? This is called the door god making a fortune. Only these people will use practical actions. It's more practical than 100,000 people shouting slogans on the street. This is psychological warfare. Why are you beating around the bush? Just tell me what you're going to do. Isn't that enough? If you want people, I'll find a few hundred brothers for you now. Isn't it just buying land? I'll go and do something big for him now. What do you think? When Zhang Feng saw this, he speechlessly stared at Qing Yaojin and said, "I say, can you not be so silly? We're not going to the battlefield to kill the enemy, nor are we going to dry up. If you do so much, You'll only make things worse. Just wait and see. Let this matter brew for a while. We don't need too many people. Just a small number of people will stir up this matter. And what we need to do is wait. Wait. Li Shimin and the others were even more confused. They hurriedly asked, Fengzi, what do you mean? It's just waiting. When they can't hold it in anymore, when Niu Weili takes the initiative to drive out the people who bought the land, it's time for us to act. Cheng Yaojin was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. If he was asked to charge into the battlefield, he could do it. But if it was a conspiracy, he really couldn't do it. He could only sit down and smoke a cigarette sullenly. Li Shimin frowned and said, Old Chen, don't be so impatient. Fengzi naturally has his reasons for this arrangement. Let's hear him out first. In fact, this matter was very easy to understand. After all, this matter was just like this. It was just to let these people see for themselves whether this was the case or not. When Li Shimin saw that they had all quieted down, he said, You see, if there's anything else you need. If you need manpower or any preparations, just tell me. I'll go and prepare now. How about it? There's no need. You just need to reap the benefits. As for the rest, we'll talk about it when the time comes. That's it. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng with some surprise. Zhang Feng nodded and said, In fact, isn't it just like this? Let the matter ferment on its own. What else can we do? Chapter 1464. After waiting for a long time, Li Shimin suddenly realized that Zhang Feng had been talking for a long time, but it was the same as not talking at all. If this matter was left to ferment naturally, then why did they have to spend so much effort here? What was the point? At the thought of this, Li Shimin felt like he was in Tesco. With a headache, he patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, Fengzi, why don't I go back first? You think about it and see how to deal with this matter. I'll go back first. Zhang Feng was stunned. Didn't we talk about it clearly? Just go back and wait for the news. Oh right, ask someone to bring some malt seeds back. When the time comes, these things will have an unexpected effect. Li Shimin did not want to stay for a moment longer. This matter was too tiring. After staying for so long, no one expected that Zhang Feng would give such an answer. How could Li Shimin not be speechless? There were a lot of things to do in the court now. If not for the fact that this matter was the most important thing to solve these problems, they would not have come. Autumn planting was too important. In fact, to put it bluntly, they came here this time to completely solve the problem of autumn planting. Once these problems were solved, they would know how to deal with everything in the future. After all, food was the king's path. Once he had food, Li Shimin would be able to attack the Turks if he wanted to. If he wanted to exterminate the 5 clans and 7 clans, he would be able to do so in the blink of an eye, and he wouldn't cause the slightest disturbance in the imperial court. Only by controlling food could one control the lifeline of a country, and the direction of a country's national destiny. At this time, Li Shimin felt that Zhang Feng's words were too incredible. What kind of problem could be solved in such a simple situation? Previously, many spies were sent out, but there was no way to make the people accept this thing. Now they only needed to do nothing and it would work? In any case, regardless of whether others believed it or not, Li Shimin really did not believe that this thing could be so simple. Li Shimin left. Along the way, they took away 3 large carts of wheat seeds that had sprouted. These seeds were basically removed from the soil on the wheat seeds. Together with the soil, they were placed on the carts and then carefully carried down the mountain by 4 imperial guards. Let's not talk about the reactions of the people from White Deer College. Just the merchants in Xiao Mountain Market were scared out of their wits by this scene. No one knew what was going on. They also didn't know what had happened on the mountain for them to bring so much land down the mountain. Is there no more soil at the foot of the mountain? Or was there something different about this soil? All of a sudden, all the people in the marketplace of Mount Ji exploded. Like a frying pan, they swarmed around the imperial guards who were disguised as guards. They wanted to see what was on the handcart. However, before they could even get close, under the sharpness of the MO sabers, everyone became timid. The next moment, all kinds of rumors and slanders began to circulate in the marketplace. Yesterday, I heard from the workers in Tonghui Square that the dean came up with something new on the mountain. Today, those noble young masters are tinkering with something in the villa area on the mountain and by the big lake. In a short while this news spread and brewed in the marketplace. Not long after, the incident of Zhang Feng frying fish in the lake last time was also exposed. Last time 5 days ago, there were waves of thunder on the mountain. Do you still remember? At this moment, in front of the fermented rice wine stall, a strong man was eating fermented rice wine as he looked at the long line and said. In an instant, everyone looked over and asked anxiously, "When did this happen? Why didn't we know about it?" The strong man rolled his eyes and pointed at the gate of the academy. "Go talk to the guards there, and you'll know everything. 5 days ago, didn't the dean invite all the students of the academy to a banquet? You all know about it, right?" Hearing this, everyone nodded. The incident last time was too big, so many people knew about it. After all, the fact that the dean invited the entire academy to eat fish caused a great sensation at that time. The most important thing was that the fish was blown out of the lake by the dean in a magical way. He let the fish jump to the shore by themselves. Isn't it magical? This time, in an instant everyone gasped. At this moment, when they looked at those people carrying the handcart, there was a touch of horror in their eyes. Then someone asked, "Then do you think this soil is the same thing used to get fish last time?" The strong man shook his head, pointed down the mountain and said, "Are you stupid? How could this be that thing? I think this should be related to the land that the dean went to buy today." In an instant, someone couldn't help but exclaim, "Are you talking about phosphate fertilizer? The dean is going to get the phosphate fertilizer down the mountain? F***ck. It seems it's very likely." For a moment, the people in the marketplace were no longer in the mood to do business. They all wanted to go up and see if there was phosphate fertilizer in it. After all, when they were at the foot of the mountain today, the students on the mountain had shown how to extract phosphate fertilizer. That was to say, this thing, it was either related to phosphate fertilizer, or it was real phosphate fertilizer. There was no doubt about it. Chapter 1465. The handcart was not big. It only had the appearance of a normal handcart. However, at this moment, the handcart was moving slowly on the flat cement ground, as if it was afraid that the dirt on the handcart would cause the slightest bump. It was moving extremely slowly. There were countless guards standing guard around the handcart. However, the more it was like this, the more the rumors spread. All the people who were doing business in the market came over one after another. They even forgot about the shiny MO swords in their hands. The blade was very cold. However, for all the people who had hope in their hearts at this moment, this was nothing. At the very least, today, they could get what they dreamed of in their hearts. Phosphor fertilizer. Although they did not know if this thing could really increase the food supply, and if it was really as miraculous as the dean said, this thing could only be known when it was in their hands. Moreover, the most important thing was, at this moment, on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, the news that the dean had gone to buy land was spreading like wildfire. What was this? This was the biggest doubt. Why would the dean buy so much land at this time? The curiosity of people was really like what Zhang Feng said, endless. Under the strong curiosity, everyone wanted to know whether these things were real or fake. This made Cheng Yaojin, who was leading the team, could not help but sigh with emotion. Then the footsteps slowed down again. At this moment, the people in the market looked at the handcarts and discussed animatedly. However, for some unknown reason, the speed of the entire convoy suddenly slowed down completely. It was also at this moment that a trace of chaos appeared in the originally calm convoy. The horse in one of the carriages seemed to be frightened, and backed up a little, instantly neighing. The next moment, the entire carriage trembled. This trembling did not matter, but the whole thing in the carriage also trembled instantly. Rustling. Under the shocked gazes of all the people, the thing behind the carriage fell to a corner. In the next moment, the carriage seemed to have not noticed, and continued to move forward. After waiting for the entire convoy to leave, the commoners hurriedly followed behind. At a glance, however, no one dared to touch the fallen soil, as if there was something terrifying in the soil. One had to know that there were people who had died from phosphate fertilizer poisoning. In addition, when they were experimenting with phosphate fertilizer, they used a white thing to cover their mouths and noses. The rumor that it was poisonous was not groundless. How could this not make everyone curious and anxious? At this moment, a burly man squeezed through the crowd and stuck his head out to take a look. Then he waved his hand and said, "Everyone disperse. Let me take a look at what this thing is." As he spoke, not only did the crowd not retreat, they even surrounded him even more tightly. Although the burly man spoke casually, he was already lying like a dog in his heart. However, he could only brace himself and use a stick to gently dig at the pile of dirt. However, this soil seemed to be no different from normal soil. It was simply the most common soil in the field. Why were these people so careful when carrying this soil? Everyone was dumbfounded. "Oh my God! Look, what is that?" At this moment, an exclamation was heard. In an instant, the burly man was so frightened that his whole body trembled. He shouted angrily behind him, "What are you shouting about? Can't you see that I'm fiddling with it? No, look right in front of your stick. What's that green thing?" For a moment, although the burly man was a little angry, he still subconsciously looked at the wooden stick in his hand, and then at the crowd behind him. He saw that the eyes of the people surrounding him were fixed on it, as if there was something extraordinary in front of his stick. He couldn't help but be even more dumbfounded. He scratched his head and forced down the panic in his heart. "Isn't this just the soil in the ground? Look at how scared you are," I thought. In an instant, the moment he finished speaking, his eyes also saw something in the soil in front of his stick. There really seemed to be something. That thing was very small, very thin. If one did not look carefully, no one would be able to see it. However, in this yellow soil, that tender green thing that was much thicker than a strand of hair was extremely eye-catching. It was a malt. This thing. No one would be mistaken. But such a thick malt was really rare. In addition, what time was it now? Even if it started on the day of the autumn planting sacrifice, it had only been 10 days until now. Who could make the malt sprout at this time? At this moment, the burly man's hands trembled as he carefully peeled off the soil under the malt, and then revealed the root wrapped in black and gray grass ash the size of a soybean. This time, everyone was even more confused. Everyone recognized this thing. It was the grass ash that they were most familiar with. But why did it appear here? And how could it? They could not help it. The burly man, with trembling hands, held the ball of grass ash in his hand as if holding a treasure, and then gently peeled off the grass ash outside. The next moment, a golden yellow seed was revealed. Hiss! Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They exclaimed, "Oh my God! How is this possible? How can wheat be planted in such a way? Could it be that these handcarts carry such things?" Chapter 1466. For a moment, everyone's eyes were wide open. Those who were closer and bolder also went forward and rummaged through the mud on the ground. A moment later, someone dug out countless germinated wheat seeds from the ground. At this moment, everyone was shocked. They held the wheat in their hands excitedly and cheered as if they had found a treasure. "It's true. It's true. Phosphate fertilizer. Is this the function of phosphate fertilizer? Ha ha ha." After people in the market of Shao Mountain discovered the secret of the soil, the news spread out like a storm in the market. The people, they were all pedantic and extremely stubborn. In their minds, this seemed to be the most normal thing. It was as if the heavens were looking out for them. That was why they discovered the big secret of White Deer College. In an instant, people in the entire G Mountain market became restless one after another. Some people didn't even care about their stalls. They hurriedly packed up and ran to Chang'an City. Some people even wrapped their stalls in straw mats, clamped them under their armpits, and ran up the mountain in a hurry. Going up the mountain now was undoubtedly the best chance to see Zhangfeng. It was also the best chance to know the secret of making wheat germinate in 10 days. This was the most important thing for the people. At least, this thing. It was a hard currency that could fill their stomachs next year and prevent them from starving to death. Report. Out of Shao Mountain Market. Cheng Yaojin's spies didn't stop. They reported everything that happened in Shao Mountain Market to Cheng Yaojin in detail. General, someone is going up the mountain to beg the dean. Report. General, someone is going to buy land from the Chang and local government like the dean. Report. Someone sent the news to Chang'an City. As the news came in one by one, Cheng Yaojin took a deep puff of his cigarette and waved his hand lightly. The next moment, the entire fleet slowly stopped moving forward. Seeing this, Cheng Yaojin said, "Stop moving." All the soldiers who were disguised as guards were dumbfounded. Didn't His Majesty say that at this time, they should send the things to Chang'an City as soon as possible? How could this be? Cheng Yaojin's personal guard could not help but remind him in a low voice, "General, His Majesty just ordered that this thing must be sent to Chang'an as soon as possible." Cheng Yaojin glanced at the guard. The guard was so frightened that his body trembled, and he didn't say anything else. "Pass down my orders, cook rice." The guard was dumbfounded. This time he was completely dumbfounded. The distance from Shao Mountain to Chang'an was less than 20 li. Moreover, they had just eaten on the mountain. It had only been 2 hours, and they were eating again? However, he didn't know what Cheng Yaojin wanted to do, so he could only follow his orders. There weren't many people in the team, only a little more than 100, and there were more than 30 carriages. At this time, under Cheng Yaojin's command, everyone was carrying out their respective tasks in an orderly manner. As for the guard, after passing the order, he returned to Cheng Yaojin's side and followed closely. Cheng Yaojin took off the pouch on his body and took out a handful of wheat from his arms. He sighed and said, "This is really good stuff. Do you want to ask why we disobeyed the imperial decree?" The guard heard this and hurriedly said, "I don't dare." Cheng Yaojin glanced at the guard and waved his hand, saying, "Tell me. Anyway, there's still a long way to Chang'an Road." The guard couldn't help but look back. He could faintly see the outline of Chang'an City. He didn't know how to answer, so he just bit his lip and said nothing. Seeing this, Cheng Yaojin slapped the guard's head hard and scolded, "Idiot! Do you know why I'm doing this?" The guard was shocked and hurriedly knelt down on one knee saying, "I don't know." This thing. Although it's the emperor's decree, he didn't say when the malt should be sent to Chang'an City. Besides, that guy said that we need to let things brew for a while. Didn't we just send a message that the people in Shao Mountain have found the malt? Now you know, right? What's more, what we need now is to let things brew. Pass down the order that no one should mention this matter again. If anyone wants to go home, I'll allow him to go home today. Cheng Yaojin had his own plan. Didn't Feng Zi say that he should let him brew this matter on his own? That's fine. Let's start a fire for him. As for whether the fire would burn or not, it depended on the group of people in Shao Mountain Market, and how big a sensation it would cause in Chang'an City. The reason why Cheng Yaojin brought these people here this time was that they were all people around Chang'an City. Early in the morning, he had received the emperor's secret order to delay as much as possible. Otherwise, how could Cheng Yaojin delay like this? Wasn't he courting death? Chapter 1467. The afterglow of the setting sun was slowly sprinkling on Chang'an City. In the past, at this time, the people who were farming in the fields were returning to the city one after another. It was also the time when the businessmen were preparing to pack up and go home. However, today was different. Although the businessmen on the street had already packed up their stalls, countless people could be seen everywhere. They were whispering, and many people were even looking at the city gate as if they were waiting for something. And the most reliable source of information for the people was the storytellers in the tea houses in Chang'an. Today was the busiest day for their business. Usually at this time, the storytellers would have already run away. But today was different. Everyone was spending money like water, and what they wanted to hear was what happened on the mountain. They wanted to hear about the phosphate fertilizer and the purchase of the land today. The most anticipated event was undoubtedly the Hungtong Tea House, where Blind Sun, who was famous in Chang'an City, was staying. The owner of the tea house was a woman, and she was rumored to be as beautiful as Jingshu, the most beautiful woman in Chang'an. However, no one had seen what this woman looked like. They only knew that she was from the palace. Since this tea house was opened, few people dared to make trouble. No one dared to make trouble. Even the 4 great devils who were famous in Chang'an city had to take a detour if they came here. Today the business of the Hungtong tea house was unusually good. The entire second floor of the tea house was full of people. Even the corridor on the second floor was full of high-ranking officials and dignitaries, let alone the first floor. The people on the first floor were so crowded that they almost burst the door. There was no tea to drink, and they couldn't even squeeze through. It was difficult to go to the outhouse. Who the hell cared about drinking tea? At the entrance of the tea house, the people who used to cherish money as much as their lives held up their copper plates and stood on tiptoe, looking at the door eagerly. They wanted to go in and see Blind Sunday. In the end, Hungtong Tea House had no choice but to ask Blind Sun to leave the tea house for the first time. At this time, the people in the tea house all opened the windows. Some even broke the window paper, for fear of missing something. Blind Sun's storytelling stall was also set up on the street in front of the Hungtong Tea House. All of a sudden, the entire intersection between West and East City was filled with people. It was an airtight sea of people moving about. Blind Sun had also changed his outfit today. Beside him, there was a little girl around 12 or 13 years old. Her hair was tied up in 2 braids. Her hair was tied with a red string, and a red ribbon was wrapped around her waist. She was wearing an apricot robe, and her cheeks were rosy. She was holding a pipa in her hands. Although she was small, she did not have any stage fright in the face of such a scene. Sitting upright on the platform, he gently played a piece of music. The storyteller's music was very particular. It was not an ordinary song. He was mainly playing along with the storytelling atmosphere, and the stories were long and passionate, while the stories were low and hoarse. At this moment, the sound of the music echoed. Blind Sun clasped his hands behind his back and slowly tidied up his gray robe that was covered in puddings. Then he slowly ascended the stage. Pa! The gavel clanged. In an instant, everyone's voices quieted down. Blind Sun looked around with a solemn expression, and then said, "Today it's rare that everyone is in such a good mood. Today, I believe that everyone doesn't want to listen to other things. You just want to hear what the Emperor Star on Shao Mountain has done, right? Wasn't this nonsense? Otherwise, who would come here to join in the fun when it was almost dark?" Amidst the complaints, Blind Sun said leisurely, "It's a coincidence. Just now I just found out some news. Just today 4 hours ago, Mr. Hsien, the Dean of White Deer College and the youngest great scholar of the Tang Dynasty, Prince Zhang, did something extraordinary on the mountain." "What did he do?" "Blind Sun, don't keep us in suspense. Just say it." "That's right. We don't have time to listen to your nonsense today. In a bit, you won't be short of a single copper coin. Why don't you tell us what exactly Principal Zhang wants to do with today's matters? Is that phosphate fertilizer real or not? This matter has been going on for a long time, but no one has come out to say what the phosphate fertilizer is. If you want to say that it is useful, then we have to come up with something trustworthy, right?" In the face of everyone's questions, Blind Sun took a sip of tea and unfolded his fan. He slowly said, "What this old man wants to talk about today is actually this matter. But before that, I would like to ask everyone to calm down and let me finish speaking. Is that all right?" Seeing this, everyone had to be patient and wait. This matter was too big. At this time, everyone's hearts were in a mess. Everyone was thinking about the phosphate fertilizer. After all, the people in Tonghuifang were crazy about buying land. At this time, in Chang'an City, whether it was the rich or the ordinary people, they were all in a mess. No one was sure what Zhang Feng wanted to do by buying so much land at this time. But the only thing they knew was that after today, Chang'an would definitely be in chaos. At this time, Blind Sun stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Today on the mountain, President Zhang and Mr. Xian publicized the extraction process of the phosphate fertilizer. More than 4,000 people in White Deer College witnessed the whole process. They even explained the various things to pay attention to and how to extract it clearly. That's not all. Go to the market on Shao Mountain and ask around. Today, in the market, The students on the mountain also spent 2 hours to publicly show this matter to the people at the market at the foot of the mountain. Buzz. Chapter 1468. All the people were in an uproar, including those high-ranking officials and dignitaries on the second floor. They were all frowning. They had also heard about it. After all, Shao Mountain Market was a big fat piece of meat. Although there were only the students on the mountain, with the fame of the academy in Zhangfeng, it was constantly expanding. In addition, Zhangfeng's several big industries and the cigarette industry directly attracted the businessmen from the western regions. They didn't even want to enter Chang'an city. Not only was it troublesome to enter the city, but it was also troublesome to continue. But this market was different. Although there were also Chang'an garrisons at the Shao Mountain Pass, the garrisons were not as tricky as those at the city gate. As long as you were a serious businessman, as long as you checked the route you took, and the permits from the state government were correct, you could enter. You could enter for free. It was free. And the stalls in the market were all free. No fees were charged. If you wanted to find a place to keep your stall, you only needed to go to the local government of Chang and to apply for an approval, and then show it to the people of the academy in the market. Then you could build a house in the planned place. That was all. Even if you built a shed, no one would care. Unlike in Chang'an City, here everyone was equal. This was the most attractive place for businessmen. Even if you were a big shot, you would still have to follow the rules when you came here. After all, this was the fief of White Deer College. No matter how arrogant you were, you had to behave here. Otherwise, you motherf asterisk cur, don't even think about entering this city square again. This was Zhang Feng's rule. Everyone had to follow it. Even if Grand Prince Li came, he would have to hand over his invitation card obediently. Therefore, basically most of the businessmen in Chang'an City, the aristocratic families with industries and sidelines, and those high-ranking officials and dignitaries had their own businesses in this market. There was no other way. This was the way to survive. These people had already known about what had happened in the Ji Mountain Market today. However, no one knew if it was the same on the mountain. Now that Blind Sun said this, although there were some things they couldn't figure out, at least when Blind Sun was talking, the officials and nobles on the second floor didn't interrupt. On the other hand, it was the commoners. At this moment, he was even crazier. After all, the phosphor fertilizer matter had already caused a lot of noise. Because of this matter, many people were killed. Even Zhang Feng, who had always been known as a nice guy, killed people in Chang'an City when he was angry. Moreover, this matter was tacitly approved by the emperor. Did this mean that the emperor had tacitly approved the phosphate fertilizer? Moreover, I heard that Zhang Feng bought 300 hectares of land today. What kind of concept was that? Even in Chang'an City, it was only a few hundred hectares. But 300 hectares. How could the emperor not know about this? That would be strange. At this time, most of the people on the second floor had already sent the people who bought the land to the Chang'an local government, although no one had come back to reply. However, there was still a glimmer of hope. As for how big this hope was, it depended on the emperor's imperial edict tomorrow morning. Once today's matter was confirmed, all the people on the second floor had made up their minds. Even if they had to put down their faces and beg Niu Weili, whose official rank was much lower than theirs, they wouldn't refuse. And the most important part was the phosphate fertilizer. At this time, the discussions of the commoners rose and fell. That Blind Sun couldn't even speak properly. The officials and nobles on the second floor were a little angry. However, they couldn't get angry for no reason because they were putting on airs. At this time, Blind Sun was the first to get angry. With a bang, he threw the gavel and said, "Since you all know more than Old Man, why don't we listen to you today?" Hearing that, the people immediately became obedient. As for the attentive people on the second floor, they discovered that the window on the third floor was slowly closing. That woman was angry. At this time, the people on the second floor became more obedient. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one dared to say anything. At this moment, Blind Sun slowly cupped his fists towards the third floor and said, "You guessed right. Young Master Zhang is a kind person. He originally planned to keep this thing for himself. Just now, I met with the old village chief of Tonghui Lane. He said that young Master Zhang Feng once said that he did so much just to let the people of Tang Empire have food to eat. Moreover, he said that young Master Zhang Feng once said that he did so much just to let the people of Tang Empire have food to eat. Moreover, they can eat their fill, wear warm clothes and not be bullied. As for this phosphate fertilizer, your guess is correct. The current emperor knows about this matter. Furthermore, during the autumn planting ceremony, the emperor had used this phosphate fertilizer on the imperial manor on Mount Long's Ho. Before that, someone made a scene in Mount Shao and forced Qian Wanli's former young master to death. You all know that, right? Prince Zhang didn't come forward to explain it not because he didn't have evidence, but because he was busy. Do you know what he was busy with? In the past 10 days, President Zhang has been guarding the wheat field that he personally planted every day. Just today, just now I heard the old village head say that the director's wheat has sprouted. In 10 days, the wheat has sprouted. Chapter 1469. Seedlings sprouted? 10 days, wheat. Seedlings sprouted from wheat. How could this be possible? Everyone was going crazy. They were all farmers who had been in contact with the Zhuang family for generations. They knew very well when the Zhuang family's seeds would sprout, and when they would produce seedlings. However, how could this be possible? 10 days, wheat could sprout. For a moment, whispers were incessant. Even the high officials and dignitaries on the second floor, who had been quiet all the time, could not sit still at this time. They started to talk about it. This matter was not simple. It was possible to make the wheat in the field sprout within 10 days, and it was also a common thing. But to make the wheat sprout within 10 days, this did not make sense. At this time, although many people didn't know what was going on, at the very least, this thing was definitely related to the matter of the phosphate fertilizer. At this time, on the second floor, a short, dark-skinned middle-aged man cupped his fist and said, "Mr. Sun, we all know about the things you said. Are they related to the phosphate fertilizer? And the matter of buying land today, does it have anything to do with Master Feng and the others buying land in large quantities a few days ago?" The words of the man on the second floor instantly attracted everyone's attention. Someone looked at the middle-aged man and could not help exclaiming, "Isn't this the butler of the minister of the agriculture temple, Lord Liu?" In an instant, everyone looked at that man in a different way. The agriculture temple was the best hub to manage the farmland of the entire Tang dynasty. Above it was the Ministry of Works, which was a special department that could be directly subordinate to the emperor. At this time, the people of this department came. What did this mean? This indicated that the people of the Western Agricultural Temple were also paying attention to this matter. Furthermore, the Western Agricultural Temple didn't even have the most basic information about this matter. When Blind Sun heard this, he cupped his fists towards the second floor and said, "Originally, Lord Housekeeper, you are right. In fact, if this matter is not connected, then it really can't be justified. However, as for why even the thrifty Fang Gong would spend so much money and go through so much trouble to do such a thing, I don't know the specifics of this matter. However, I have heard that on that day, the emperor and the marquises had a discussion at Fang Gong's manor. Thus, I feel that this matter should be connected." He really didn't know where these people got the news from. It seemed that this matter had been forcibly hidden by someone. No one knew what was going on. Most importantly, even if the people behind him were to investigate, they would not be able to find out anything. After all, the person behind him was the current crown prince. What did that mean? If even the crown prince didn't have the authority to investigate, or rather he wasn't going to investigate, and was just trying to cover it up, then, at this moment, Blind Sun continued, "In fact, everyone, don't panic. According to my observation, there is a missing middleman. That middleman is Laoli. I have inquired about this matter before. The most active one among them is a mysterious businessman. I have heard that this businessman is extremely powerful and has a complicated network of relationships. He also calls Lord Zhang Feng, the dean of White Deer College, as well as has a close relationship with Lord Zhangsun Wuji of the Censorate. Thus, I feel that this matter of Prince Zhang buying the land is definitely not a coincidence. And when he bought the land, the people on the mountain were doing the extraction of phosphate fertilizer. I don't need to say more about what this means, right? After Blind Sun finished speaking, the whole place was in an uproar. What? Oh my God! Could it be that the phosphate fertilizer is real? But this damn phosphate fertilizer, where on earth can we get it? At this time, there is less than a month before the autumn planting ends. This phosphate fertilizer. At this moment, there was a slight disturbance at the back of the crowd. A fat woman was stumbling into the crowd, shouting a person's name at the top of her lungs. Sun Ergu, where the F***ck are you? Sun Ergu. Come home with me. Sun Ergu. A moment later, a dark-skinned and skinny middle-aged man came running out of Hungtong's carriage tower, as if he was startled. He immediately interrupted everyone's conversation. The two of them, one thin and weak, and the other fat, instantly caused waves of laughter in the hall. Although Blind Sun was slightly displeased, he could do nothing but wait for this farce to end. But some people could not wait. The housekeeper on the second floor scolded with a gloomy face. Men quickly dragged these two people away. Hearing this, the fat woman's face instantly turned pale with fright. She stopped shouting to find her husband and said hurriedly, "Sir, please spare my life. I really did not mean to disturb you, but this matter concerns our income next year, so I was so presumptuous." At this moment, the crowd scolded the woman for her recklessness. The woman was also anxious. Suddenly she shouted angrily, "Look at what this is. I just picked it up on the official road. Someone pulled it down from the soil of Shao Mountain." While speaking, the woman opened her hand, and there were a few bluish-yellow wheat seedlings that were lying quietly in the wind. They were slightly green in color, and they were fluttering in the wind. In an instant, the whole street, everything fell into a deathly silence. Chapter 1470. My meow. They really saw my meow. And it was real. What did that mean? What the F***k does that mean this thing? This meant that the matter of the phosphate fertilizer was real. Everything was real. The mysterious matter of buying land was also real. For a moment, everyone no longer paid attention to Blind Sun, as they all surrounded the woman. "This. Madam, where did you get this thing? I'll give you 10 copper coins. How about you sell it to me? I'll give you 1,000 strings of cash." The woman was dumbfounded. She looked at the money in front of her in surprise and did not know what to do. But in the face of such a huge temptation, she still chose money. After all, money was the right thing to do. What was the use of a sprout? After choosing the highest bidder, the woman pulled her man and rushed out of the crowd happily. Of course, she was not going home. She was going straight to the Chang'an local government. When she was at the city gate earlier, there were already countless people waiting there. She had only managed to snatch that handful of soil after breaking her head. He didn't know who was in charge of this, but in general, if this thing could be brought into the city and transported to the palace, it meant that this thing was incomparably precious. Soon after, the plump woman found out that these things were obtained from the White Deer Institute, and they were related to phosphate fertilizers. In an instant, the plump woman saw hope. Phosphate fertilizer. He had only heard of this thing, but had never seen it before. How could he have known that this thing would actually have such a great use? He regretted that he did not get more just now. 1,000 strings of cash. He could sell another mu of land with that. After the fat woman and the thin man left in a hurry, the person who bought the seed also disappeared into the crowd. Then he appeared in the homes of the high-ranking officials in Chang'an City. In the next moment, the entire Chang'an City was in turmoil. Everyone rushed to the Chang'an local government. At the same time, in the imperial study of the palace, spies came in an endless stream. They came in a hurry and left in a hurry. In front of him, there was a large pile of memorials. Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui were hurriedly organizing these things. Li Shimin would not ask about these things. But this matter was so serious that he did not dare to take it lightly. Although Zhang Feng made it sound easy and this matter could be solved easily, Li Shimin was worried when he saw the mountain of spies and the risks involved in this matter. This was the first time something like this had happened since ancient times. If this matter continued to develop, it would only bring him endless trouble. Let's not talk about these things for now. If things were to continue like this, then the land, at the thought of this, Li Shimin rubbed his forehead. Go send the message quickly. From now on, whoever dares to buy or sell land will be fined double. Hearing this, Zhang Sunwuji's hand trembled and pulled out a big lump of his beard. He hurriedly asked, Your Majesty, perhaps it's a little too late now? If we go now, then... Yu Qigong also hurriedly tried to persuade him. They had no choice. Their men had all gone to buy land. They had not returned until now. They did not know what was going on. If they went now, they would definitely be seen. By then they would be in trouble. Therefore, at this time, they could only pray that the emperor would not give the order so soon. At least, before the morning court tomorrow. During this period, they were very confident that they could do something. When Li Shimin heard this, he looked at the few of them playfully. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? When they heard this, they were a little embarrassed and buried their heads in their chests. Seeing this, Li Shimin shook his head speechlessly and said, This order has to be given. Just now, the spy reported that the people from the Ministry of Works have gone there, but they still can't suppress it. The local government of Chang'an can't hold it anymore. Moreover, according to the news, there is no fertile land within a radius of 20 miles of Chang'an. Basically, all of it has been sold. At this time, someone is actually preparing to reach near Mount Longsho. Who do you think it is? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Someone had actually stretched their hand to where? That was the royal garden, where the imperial manor was, and where the iron ore and phosphate mines were. At this time, even they did not dare to think about where to reach at this time. This was simply courting death. Who was it? Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about this for now. I know what you're thinking. If you want land, I'll give you some at my discretion. Why do you have to add to the trouble now? Wei Zheng, Zhang Sunwuji, Yu Qigong, I'll leave this matter to the three of you. Quickly go to the local government of Chang, and then thoroughly investigate this matter. Also, find out who wants to buy Mount Longsho. Chapter 1471. Night fell just like that. The entire city of Chang and had fallen into darkness. The lanterns were like glowing gems that filled the night sky. They were hidden in a thin layer of fog and flickered. In Chang'an City, squads of city defense army were shuttling back and forth in every corner of Chang'an City. Apart from that, the whole Chang'an City was eerily quiet. Not even a dog barking could be heard in Chang'an City tonight. The extreme silence only lasted for a short while. After the people from the city defense team left, Chang'an City slowly became lively. People in all kinds of clothes shuttled back and forth in the shadows before entering the buildings one by one. It seemed that there was something waiting for them. In the west of Chang'an City, there was an ordinary house near the residence of the 16th prince. At this time, it was already brightly lit. But strangely, all the places where light could pass through were covered with quilts. If a dark shadow hadn't knocked open a window by chance, no one outside would have noticed the abnormality. Inside the room, there were already dozens of people wearing clothes of various colors. Their faces were covered, and they were whispering to each other. When the black figure arrived, everyone in the room instantly fell silent. The man took off the bamboo hat on his head, revealing a head of gray hair. His face was covered with a black mask, just like everyone else. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly got up and bowed. The man waved his hand and motioned for everyone to sit down. He looked around with his hawk-like triangular eyes and said, Everyone, my master said that after today, the meeting with so many people will be cancelled. When he finished speaking, everyone exclaimed in an instant. Then they asked in a low voice. The man waved his hand and said helplessly, This is a choice that must be made for the sake of the great cause. Today, on the mountain and in Chang'an City, you all know about it, right? I don't want to talk too much about this matter. Zhang Feng has already noticed us. The reason why he took out this phosphate fertilizer today, and didn't hesitate to pull out all the wheat seedlings in the field is undoubtedly to lure us out of the snake's hole. What? He is just a young boy who is still wet behind the ears. How can he think so much? Since he wants to lure us out, isn't it better to give him a thunderous blow? Why should we be so afraid? He's just a nameless brat with no background. Could it be that Master is so afraid of him? Yes, Master. Today many people in Chang'an city are also in an uproar because of the land purchase. During the morning assembly tomorrow, someone will definitely mention it. As long as we do a little work, we will definitely frame Zhang Feng with the crime of disrupting the order of the court and deliberately instigating people to rob the land purchase. As long as we are convicted of the crime, we can easily get the phosphate fertilizer and Zhang's secret. The old man pondered for a moment and then shook his head. The crowd was in an uproar. Why? The old man put his hands behind his back and looked at the empty wall in the room. Our master said that this matter is actually a big net woven by Zhang Feng and the emperor. And the so-called Lao Li, who is rumored in the market, is actually the emperor's man. Buzz. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but gasp. The emperor's man? What did this mean? Could it be that the emperor knew all this from the beginning and acquiesced to Zhang Feng's nonsense on the mountain? This didn't make sense. If so, didn't it mean that their plan had been exposed from the beginning? Now, our master asked us to stop the discussion and chose to remain silent. Was it because he was afraid of being exposed? But what kind of person was Master? He was someone who could reach the heavens. If we knew this person, if we could get rid of him, it would be like breaking one of the emperor's arms. Wouldn't it be easier for our master's plan to succeed? Why did he choose to remain silent? Facing the doubts of the crowd, the old man shook his head and said, "Don't argue about this matter." Our master said that although we did a good job in the beginning, we did it too hastily. That guy found out something. Last time, that guy went to the mountain to meet Zhang Feng, and then the phosphate fertilizer was exposed to the world. That is to say, that guy has found out about our existence, or maybe he has been vigilant. The reason why he did this was to lure us out. Could it be that you didn't notice anything from the Tang family? Why did Zhang Feng go crazy and kill people in Chang'an city? Didn't you find anything? Why did he send a student to the funeral in a high-profile way and then kill the 4 old forces? Didn't you think about why? Hiss. The crowd couldn't help but gasp. In an instant, they figured out all the things that they couldn't figure out before. This guy had thought about all this a long time ago. Right at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps resounded from the streets once more. In an instant, everyone fell completely silent. Only after the sound of the patrolling soldiers' footsteps had left did the old man say, "In short, from now onward, all of you must settle down. You must not allow Zhang Feng and His Majesty to get hold of any information that can be used against you." Chapter 1472. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The old man didn't have much to say at this time. After all, with his high status and authority, he knew a lot of secrets. Furthermore, he knew that the so-called Old Li was actually the current His Majesty. Since the incident at the border, or before that, the Emperor and Zhang Feng had thought about these things, but it wasn't very obvious at that time. Only this time, the damn Tang family chose such a sinister trick. Not only did they fail to force out the secret of the phosphate fertilizer and the things in Zhang Feng's head, but they also angered Zhang Feng. They didn't expect that Zhang Feng would be so terrible when he was angry. He could kill people in Chang'an city in front of so many people. He even made the people of the Wang clan choose to withdraw and not help either side. Even the people of the Wang clan are starting to be afraid. What does that mean? It meant that they had already found the clues of the problem. Zhang Feng killed people in the street to force out some information. The people of the Wang clan had already appeared on Zhang Feng's list. That was why the Wang clan gave in at the first time. At this time, if the Wang clan dared to do anything, perhaps the Wang clan, or at least the things of the Wang clan around Chang'an, would have changed their surname to Li. The old man took a deep breath and waved his hand. In short, send the message. From today onwards, everyone will go into hiding and do whatever they need to do. Act as if no one knows about this. Also, tell those who know about this to shut their mouths. Your Excellency, why don't we try harder? The rumors in Chang'an today originated from the things leaked out of the dozens of carriages. As long as we can make use of this opportunity to let our people spread rumors, I believe that we can force out the secret of the phosphate fertilizer. Shut up. The old man glared at that person fiercely, and then resumed his gentle tone. However, at that moment, the old man broke out a murderous aura that made everyone's heart tremble. This was a murderous look. The old man said faintly, "Let's leave this matter at that. All of you back off. We'll burn down the house and make it look like the kitchen caught fire." At this time, everyone was already terrified. How could they still dare to say anything? He could only accept the order and leave in a hurry. After everyone disappeared, the entire room was plunged into complete darkness. After a while, the old man slowly stood up from his chair. After confirming that there was no one else in the house, he carefully moved away the bookcase behind him and squeezed into a cave that was only half a person's height and faintly illuminated by light. The entrance of the cave was not big. However, when he entered the cave and entered the underground tunnel, he was instantly greeted by brilliant lights and an underground palace that was even more majestic than the political announcement palace. The entire underground palace was directly renovated according to the appearance of the political announcement palace. The four walls were piled with pieces of glittering gold bricks. The gold bricks were carved with 5-clawed golden dragons. The 16 huge pillars in the main hall were entwined with ferocious divine dragons. As for the pillar itself, it was piled up with jade stones. After the old man came in, he carefully sealed the hole behind the old man with wall soil. Then he used the large rocks at the side to block it up. Finally, he poured a few baskets of soil on top of it and carefully made it into the original shape of the wall. Only then did the old man hurriedly walk up the stairs on the forearm of a 5-clawed golden dragon to the top of the hall, on the dragon throne directly above the main hall. At this time, a man wearing a luxurious dragon robe was sitting on it. However, he was admiring the map of the entire Tang dynasty on the wall behind him. On both sides of this man, a group of women in revealing clothes stood carefully on both sides. They did not dare to move, as if they were dead. If it were not for the slight rise and fall of their breasts, they would undoubtedly be dead. "Your humble servant greets you, master." The old man respectfully knelt on the ground and saluted. The man waved his hand slightly and asked in a hoarse voice, "How is the matter being handled?" The voice seemed to come from under a mask, but it also seemed to be really hoarse. However, this was not important to the old man. He just said respectfully, "The order has been given." The man still did not turn his head. However, the jade beads on the crown on his head did not move at all. After a while, the man in the dragon robe asked indifferently, "What do you think of today's matter?" When the old man heard this, he hurriedly said, "Master, I think that this matter should be a trick played by Li Er and Zhang Feng. As long as we hide well enough, they will not be able to get hold of our weakness." The man's crown swayed slightly. When the old man heard this, his expression changed abruptly and he said, "I should not have recklessly guessed master's judgment. This is a capital offense. You really deserve to die. How can a filthy person like you call the emperor by his name? Don't say that before the great cause is accomplished." "Yes, master." The old man heaved a sigh of relief. Then the man said slowly, "Don't let anyone know about what happened today. Don't even think about the phosphate fertilizer. That kid has been wary of the old man since the first time he met the old man. That damned kid. Even now the old man does not know if that kid has been suspecting the old man since then. Put this matter on hold for now. Inform Chiotzi to speed up the progress. I want to see what the kid and the emperor will do next." "Yes, master." Chapter 1473. Night. It was still very dark. Although the sky was very good these days, no one knew what was going on. During this period of time, the moon always hung above everyone's head early in the morning. By the time it was 9 o'clock in the evening, the moon had already fallen on the mountains of Qinling. There was not even a single star in the sky. It was so dull that it made people feel a little depressed when they saw it. Taiji Palace. In Li Shimen's bedroom. Although it was already late at night, Li Shimen was still reading the mountainous pile of memorials by candlelight. Almost half of these memorials were urgent requests for seeds. and the other half were reports of daily trifles. Li Shimin basically did not even look at these memorials, and left them all to the secretariat. As long as it was not a serious matter, Li Shimin did not bother to pay attention to it now. In the middle of the desk, there were more than a dozen vermilion memorials. At this time, Li Shimin was reading these memorials. These memorials all came from the army. To be precise, they were urgent reports from the major military camps stationed in the border. Only such urgent reports would use memorials of this color. However, at this time, the content of the memorials gave Li Shimin a headache. Junla was in internal strife, begging the Tang army to intervene. The Tubo and Tuyuhun rebels were also slowly making progress with the participation of the Tang dynasty's army. However, Tubo and Tuyuhun were in urgent need of food, and now they were planning to send envoys to ask for food. How could the Tang dynasty have extra money and rice? If they had any, that would be good. But the most important thing was that they did not. On the other side, there was news from Li Jing in Yuzhou. Li Jing said that the army of Tuli Khan was frequently deployed at the border, and Xieli's troops in Longyu Road were doing the same. As for India, although there was no news at this time, Li Shimin vaguely felt that something seemed to be brewing in India. After all, most of the troops were gathered near Chiotsi city. It would be strange if they didn't make any big moves. The 100,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty in Tubo and Tuyuhun should already be on their way to Chiotsi. This seemed to be the reason for the unrest among the Indian and Turkic tribes. As for Tubo and Tuyuhun, although there weren't any news, the recent rebellions in these two places didn't seem to have eased up at all. Instead, the situation was getting worse. They seemed to be deliberately delaying the speed of the Tang dynasty's army heading west. This was what gave him the biggest headache. In addition, there was the unforeseen event in Chang'an, and at this time, the pair of invisible hands, and Zhang Feng's words that there seemed to be a person stirring up the situation. Moreover, this person seemed to know the situation of the Tang dynasty, and the situation in the palace like the back of his hand. This person was the one who gave Li Shimin the most headaches. Li Shimin rubbed his forehead with some distress. Although Zhang Feng didn't say all this clearly, Li Shimin knew that there seemed to be someone in the imperial court behind this matter. And this person must be in a high position and power. But who on earth was this person? This was what worried Li Shimin the most. After coming down from Mount Shao, Li Shimin had been thinking about this matter, but until now, he still couldn't figure out a clue. At this time, at the door of the bedroom, Xiao Gizi gently knocked on the door. Seeing this, Li Shimin hurriedly came to his senses and coughed. Seeing this, Xiao Gizi hurriedly pushed open the door a crack, and bent over to enter Li Shimin's study. Li Shimin seemed to have made an agreement with Xiao Gizi. As soon as he entered the door, Xiao Gizi hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, just now the spy reported that a house near Jiaqing was on fire." Generally, such things didn't need to be reported to him, but at this time, Xiao Gizi personally said it. Li Shimin instantly noticed that something was different. He waved his hand and said, "Tell me in detail." Earlier today, our spies discovered that people wearing night clothes were entering the house one after another. At first, our people really didn't notice this inconspicuous house, but the strange thing was that this house's windows and doors were all covered with quilts, and only those people could see when they entered, so the spies went forward to investigate. Although they didn't hear anything, after these people left for a meal, the house caught fire. Li Shimin was stunned and said, "You mean, did they catch them?" Xiao Gizi hurriedly said, "They were caught, but these people didn't say anything. Even the cruelest torture was useless." However, a name occasionally came out of these people's mouths. When Li Shimin heard this, his body instantly trembled and said, "What name?" "My lord." When Li Shimin heard that, he was about to explode in anger. "My lord, that was a name?" However, these two words made him even more certain of a problem. That was, what happened in this house must be related to that pair of big hands. When he thought of this, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Pass down the message. Investigate at all costs. Also, can these people be caught? Has the fire been controlled?" Basically, everyone who came out of the house has been caught, and is trying their best to put out the fire. When Li Shimin heard this, he suddenly stood up and waved his sleeves and said, Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to find out the secret of this house for me. Also, seal the city and strictly investigate anyone who comes and goes after the curfew tonight. Chapter 1474. Dong, dong, dong. The morning bell rang 3 times. In the political announcement hall, a majestic and sonorous voice resounded. Welcome, Your Majesty. Long live Your Majesty. Li Shimin walked into the hall with a solemn expression, wearing a crown and a dragon robe. Everyone rise. With a wave of his hand, Li Shimin slowly sat down on the dragon throne. However, before he could sit down, an official from the Ministry of Works hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I have a report to submit. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Submit the report. Your Majesty, there was a rumor in the city yesterday that more than a dozen carriages of malt had been delivered from Shao Mountain. But until now, I haven't received any news about it. What's more, many people in the city were in a state of chaos because of it. Some people even went to the local government of Chang'an city to buy land because of it. What's more, some people in the imperial court also joined in. I have a report here. It contains a list of the officials in the imperial court who bought the land, as well as the area of the land that they wanted to buy, as well as the amount of money. When Li Shimin heard this, he waved his hand indifferently and said, What do you want to say? I already know about this matter. The official from the Ministry of Works was taken aback. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I respectfully request that you issue a decree to thoroughly investigate White Deer College in Shao Mountain and find out why they are disturbing the people's hearts at this time. Also, investigate these buyers and find out if they are in cahoots with the dean of White Deer College, Zhang Feng. Although the matter of the phosphate fertilizer has caused a huge uproar, our Ministry of Works has never heard of such a matter. Furthermore, we don't know which ancient book had such a record. Li Shimin glanced at the official indifferently. Then he pointed at Zhangsun Wuji and said, You can ask Minister Zhao about this matter directly. Tell me. Zhangsun Wuji hurriedly bowed and said, Yes, Your Majesty. At this time Li Shimin asked again, How many people are here for this? Your Majesty, this subject is here for this matter. This subject has something to report. This old subject has something to report. This old subject wants to participate in that White Deer College's Zhangfeng. This subject wishes to report to the Duke of Yi. Basically, as soon as Li Shimin finished speaking, countless officials stood out to accuse Yu Qigong and Zhang Feng of misconduct. Seeing this, Li Shimin smiled and said, Zhao Guogong, you say it. When Zhangsun Wuji heard this, he reported the white jade tablet. Then he looked at them indifferently and said, His Majesty has known about this since yesterday. As for the Duke of Yi's things, they are all displayed in His Majesty's imperial garden. As for the people who bought the land, last night, Old Man had already received the emperor's order, and went to the yamen with Fang Gongzi. What? The officials could not help but burst into an uproar. Does the emperor know about this? Does that mean the emperor knows about this? Then the matter of the phosphate fertilizer. Is it true? For a moment, all the officials in the imperial court began to make their own plans. If that was the case, then the emperor knew about the phosphate fertilizer. That was to say, the phosphate fertilizer was true? Is this thing really useful? In an instant, all the officials became excited. Each of their families had at least a few dozen mu of land, or even 100 mu of land. These were all bestowed by the emperor, and the autumn planting this time was very important. Is that thing that was said to be able to double, or even multiply the yield of every mu of land true? Moreover, when they returned to the city yesterday, they had personally seen the wheat sprouts that fell on the ground. Therefore, although they wanted to impeach these 2 people today, they actually wanted to confirm whether this matter was true and what the emperor would say. However, the calmness and indifference displayed by the emperor at this moment made everyone unable to remain calm. This seems probably, the emperor knows about this matter. At this moment, Li Shimin saw the fervent look in everyone's eyes and knew that the matter was about to be settled. He waved his hand and said, Do you still remember what happened that day at the heaven worship ceremony? The next day, I went to White Deer College. I only saw the 1 mu of land that Zhang Feng personally planted on the mountain from afar. Cheng Chumo and the others also personally participated in this planting. I can confirm that the thing that can make the wheat sprouts within 10 days is this phosphate fertilizer. Therefore, I decided yesterday to have these wheat sprouts transported back in the name of the Ministry of Works, so that I can personally watch these wheat sprouts grow every day. Last night, I drafted an imperial edict. Although I haven't announced it yet, I have already sent Minister Zhao to the government office. I now announce that from today onwards, any land within the Tang dynasty, including the purchase and sale of land by the people, must be approved by the Ministry of Agriculture. Li Shimin didn't mention the phosphate fertilizer. He also wanted to use the method that Zhang Feng had suggested. He didn't need to deliberately publicize it, but instead kept it a secret. He wanted to see if these people could really hold it in. It was up to them now. As for the end, although Li Shimin had not thought of a good way for the time being, when he thought of what had happened yesterday, he had only deliberately scattered some things along the path of the cart, and then arranged for a few people to go for a walk, and it had caused more than 30 memorials from officials in the court today. What did this mean? This meant that this matter had really caused a huge commotion in Chang'an city. He wanted to see if his vague words today could add fuel to the fire. Thinking of this, Li Shimin waved his sleeves and said, "Court is dismissed." Chapter 1475. Inside Chang'an City, the sky had just begun to brighten. However, the autumn fog was so cold that it was as if the air had frozen. If one went out for a walk, he or she would come back with a head full of water vapor. They were less than 10 feet apart, so they could not see if there was anyone on the other side. Even so, the sound of people coughing could be heard everywhere in the city. Some of them were teasing birds, and some of them were teasing dogs. They rose and fell one after another. At this time in the past, everyone would be curled up at home, drinking tea, looking for a good friend to chat about anything under the sun. Or would they be early in the morning? They would head out of the city. Or perhaps he had started looking for work early on. The entrance of the East Market and the entrance of the West Market were the best places to look for work. Because when it was time to open the market, countless businessmen would come. And their target was these businessmen. Whether it was transporting goods or helping people deliver goods, these were the most profitable things. Or they would help the businessmen to occupy the stalls. A slightly better stall could be sold for dozens of copper coins. If two businessmen quarreled over it, the price would be higher. It should be known that except for the shops in the East Market and the West Market, there was only so much space. The government would never sell a piece of land casually. They were all smart people. Who would do such a stupid thing? The government could still profit from it, so the higher-ups turned a blind eye to it. This had also become the rule of Chang'an City. Although there were fewer peddlers in Chang'an City now, that was relative. After all, not many people could go to the Shao Mountain Market. Those who could go anywhere had stalls in the Chang'an City Market. But at this moment, a few people from the Ministry of Internal Servants hurried over from the palace. Under everyone's astonished gazes, they posted a brand new yellow notice on the wall. In this era, yellow meant imperial power, something that could be posted on the bulletin board, and it was done by the Ministry of Internal Servants in person, was undoubtedly an imperial edict. When the people saw that, they could not stay calm. As soon as the Ministry of Internal Servants left, they swarmed over. Although most of them did not understand this thing, it did not stop them from joining in the fun. After all, this was the imperial list. It was an imperial edict. How many imperial edicts could one see in a lifetime? Furthermore, how could she post it right in front of him? If word of this got out, it would be a loss of face. What the hell is this? Is there anyone with a big mouth? Come and see what's written here? Who would recognize this word? Come and take a look. Everyone panicked. Although they squeezed through the crowd quickly, they were dumbfounded when they surrounded him. None of them were King literate. What could they do if they surrounded him? After a while, after a burst of chaos, a scholar was hurriedly invited over. This scholar was wearing the uniform of the Imperial College. When he saw the Imperial Edict on the board, he was very surprised. He hurriedly read out the contents of the Imperial Edict. The general meaning of the Imperial Edict was that the matter of the phosphate fertilizer was true, and the wheat sprouts that everyone saw yesterday were watered by the phosphate fertilizer. Furthermore, the Emperor, the Crown Prince, and the young dukes had all personally participated and seen it. Also, the sale and purchase of land had been abolished. When the crowd heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. This was real. This phosphate fertilizer. It was real. Although the Imperial Edict was vague, this Imperial Edict seemed to explain a lot of things. That was, the matter of the phosphate fertilizer was true. Although many people didn't dare to believe it, the wheat sprouts yesterday were absolutely true. Almost everyone had seen it. However, if the phosphate fertilizer was real, how long would it take for it to be produced? What was the price for it? Who could use it? The crowd couldn't help but burst into a commotion again. Everyone wanted to know if this was true. At the same time, the Eason pastry shop was blocked by people early on. It wasn't because the snacks here were delicious, nor was it because these people were so rich that they could suddenly afford to eat snacks. Everyone knew that the shopkeeper of the Eason pastry shop, Zhang Shan, was the father-in-law of the dean of White Deer College, Zhang Feng. Moreover, he had also bought land yesterday. Therefore, these people wanted to ask about the phosphate fertilizer. They even wanted to buy some land from Zhang Shan. After all, Zhang Shan was a well-known philanthropist, a great philanthropist. They didn't dare to go to Zhang Feng's mansion. Not to mention that there was no one there. Even if there were people there, they wouldn't dare to go. The area of the mansion of the 16th prince belonged to the entire Chang'an city. Apart from the imperial palace, it was the only place where the imperial guards patrolled all day. Miscellaneous people were also not allowed to make a scene there. These could be ignored. After all, although there was something wrong here, people could still enter. The only difference was the guards at the entrance of Zhang Feng's mansion. Those guards were all retired from the military. Not only were they burly men, but they also exuded a murderous aura. Every time they looked at each other, they would feel goosebumps. Who would dare to go there? Moreover, this matter was nothing else. Even if they went there, it would be useless. Therefore, the crowd set their sights on Zhang Shan. They had heard that old Master Zhang Shan had bought at least 500 mu of land in the Chang and local government yesterday. Chapter 1476. More and more people gathered at the entrance of Eason pastry shop. In the end, the entire entrance of the East Market was filled with people. Even the entrance of Zhang Shan's mansion was blocked. It was the same at the back door as well. At that moment, Zhang Shan, his wife, and Zhang Yuyao felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. They kept pacing back and forth in the living room. "Master, it's not good. A few other officials are here." At that moment, Zhang Shan's butler rushed in a panic. His shout gave Zhang Shan a fright. The others were not afraid, but the officials were here. Zhang Shan hurriedly asked, "Who's that? What's his position?" "Old Master, I heard that he's from the Ministry of War. Judging from his uniform, he seems to be a 5th-rank official. He's wearing green. The people from the Ministry of Agriculture, Taichung Temple, and the Ministry of Appointments are here." "What?" Zhang Shan was so scared that his body went limp and he sat on the ground. "Oh my God, what's going on? What are they doing here at this time?" Zhang Shan's wife also panicked. Zhang Yuyao was so anxious that her face turned pale. If it were anyone else, he could think of a way to deal with them. However, the officials were here. At this time, at that moment, another person hurried in. As soon as he entered the door, he said hurriedly, "Bad news, old master. Someone else is here. He said that he's your benefactor. There's also someone who claims to be your distant uncle." When Zhang Shan heard that, his head could not help but explode. This matter definitely had something to do with the land he bought yesterday. Otherwise, why would those distant uncles suddenly come knocking on his door? One had to know that even when he was begging on the streets, that person still slandered him, saying that he had nothing to do with him. He even got someone to beat him up. On the streets. As for this benefactor, when Zhang Shan went up the mountain, He suddenly had a vague feeling that he might be the old shopkeeper's younger brother. Back then, he thought that being a pastry chef had no future, so he went to Luozhou City to develop his career. He heard that he was doing well there. Recently, he returned to Chang'an City. It was said that he was dealing in porcelain and silk. Why would he come to the mountain gate at this time? This time, Zhang Shan could not sit still anymore. He hurriedly ordered, "Butler, have you gone to the mountain to inform them?" "I've already sent someone over, but it's probably too late." When Zhang Shan heard that, he slapped his head and said, "Let's go to Chang'an University and invite them over." Although there was no one at Chang'an University these days, the people at the gate of the college were all Zhang Feng's subordinates. Naturally, they knew about their relationship. Zhang Feng felt a little more confident when he called them over. It was not far from Chang'an University. The housekeeper found a clever person to climb over the wall and run to Chang'an University to get help. Zhang Shan hurriedly asked the housekeeper to keep the people outside under control. He silently calculated the distance from Chang'an University to here. Then he slowly put away the impatience on his face and walked out of the room. As soon as he stepped out of the room, the clamor that filled the sky made his eardrums hurt. The butler stood at the door, sweating profusely. When Zhang Shan arrived, the crowd immediately burst into an uproar. "Master Zhang is here. Master Zhang, please come out and be the judge. Why is this guy blocking our way?" Zhang Shan looked over and saw a pot-bellied official in a green official uniform standing next to the person who was shouting the loudest. When Zhang Shan looked at him, the man also looked at Zhang Shan. Then he cupped his fists in surprise and said, You can be Master Zhang Shan. I'm not talented, so I'll be working in the Ministry of Personnel." When Zhang Shan saw this, he also cupped his fists and said, "So it's you, Master Zhang. May I know what brings you here?" Before he could finish, the other officials also came forward to greet him. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a purple robe, with a pair of triangular eyes, an aquiline nose, and a bean-sized mole at the corner of his mouth, coughed and said, "Zhang Shan, I haven't seen you for many years. You've become more capable. Shanzi, I'm your uncle. Now that you've become rich, don't you want to be married to your family?" Their words instantly made their identities clear, causing the citizens who had wanted to seek help to shrink back in fear. Zhang Shan smiled bitterly and cupped his fists to calm them down. Then he said, "Everyone, I know why you're here, but you all know about the imperial list today. I don't dare to sell this land. If you want to buy it, you can go to the county government and get a certificate from the Ministry of Works. I'll definitely sell some to you. Even I can't do that now." "How can this be?" "Old Master Zhang, of course we're not here for your fields. We're here to ask you if the phosphate fertilizer thing is true. We hope Old Master Zhang can tell us clearly." "That's right, Old Master Zhang. We all know how you are. Don't try to hide it at this time. Just tell us if the phosphate fertilizer is real. Where can we get some? How about you ask your son-in-law to get some?" Zhang Shan suddenly understood. He looked at the officials and the other two. They seemed to be very nervous at this moment. He smiled helplessly and said, "Everyone, I really don't know about this. Besides, although the marriage between my daughter and Prince Zhangfeng has been settled, it's better not to talk about it. It's a secret of the academy. How can I get involved? But I can promise you one thing. I've already sent people to the mountain. If there's any news, I'll tell you immediately. How about it?" Zhang Shan didn't care whether they believed it or not. He ignored them. He hurriedly bowed to the officials and said, "Everyone please come in." Chapter 1477. Zhang Shan was also very depressed. Those commoners were easy to deal with, but these people were difficult to deal with. He had to invite them into the house first. When the white-bearded old man who claimed to be Zhang Shan's uncle saw this, he smiled and asked someone to carry him in. Although Zhang Shan didn't like it very much, there was nothing he could do. He could only let him be and pretend that he didn't see it. Along the way, the old man pointed at everything in Zhang Shan's mansion. Everything was not good and everything was not good. It seemed that he had already regarded this place as his own home. If one didn't know better, They would think that this was his mansion. Before they entered the house, Zhang Shan's steward had already hurriedly called Madame Zhang and Miss Zhang to the backyard. At this moment, when they entered the living room, the old man pointed at the layout of the living room again. The servants and maidservants of the Zhang mansion all looked displeased. But Zhang Shan had been silent. How could they dare to interrupt? When they entered the house, the old man sat at the head of the Zhang family, without caring about anything else. The few officials who saw this frowned. However, they were here today for other things. Moreover, this was other people's family matter. They had no right to interfere. They could only sit down at Zhang Shan's request. When they sat down, without waiting for Zhang Shan to speak, the old man asked, "Esteemed bailiffs, what brings you here today?" They looked at each other and then glanced at Zhang Shan, who was silent. One of them said, "We're here today for the phosphate fertilizer." "Old sir, may I know who you are?" Hearing this, the old man nodded and said, "Old man is Zhang Shan's uncle. Zhang Shan lost his parents when he was young, so I helped to deal with all the important matters. Today, when I heard of such a big matter, I naturally came to take a look." Zhang Shan couldn't listen to this anymore. He pretended that he didn't hear anything and looked out of the door with his hands behind his back. When the officials saw this, they could only chuckle. Who couldn't see that? This old man wanted to take advantage of his seniority to gain benefits. Before they came, they had already investigated Zhang Shan's background. Naturally, they knew about this old fellow. When the old man saw that they were silent, he pointed at the man who claimed to be Zhang Shan's benefactor and said, "I remember you. Back then, I personally sent Zhang Shan to your house. You were the one who always made things difficult for him. Even when Zhang Shan's master passed away, you didn't show up. It was my Shaner who took care of the old man. Tell me, what are you doing here today?" "What are you doing? Old thing, don't flatter yourself. Let's not beat around the bush. Everyone who came here today basically wanted to get some benefits from this place. Don't *king flatter yourself. Who do you think you are? If you hadn't been forced into a corner by Zhang Shan and seized Zhang Shan's family property, would my brother have taken him in as a disciple when he was about to starve to death?" The old man did not lose his temper. He smiled and took a sip of the tea. Then he frowned and said, "Shaner, we have an important guest. Are you going to serve him with this lousy tea? Why aren't you changing the tea? Sir, this is the best tea we have. Furthermore, this tea is something that even His Majesty would rarely see. It was personally made by my son-in-law. If you don't like it, then don't drink it." "How dare you?" Just when the old man was about to explode in anger, a group of dozens of burly men slowly stepped into Zhang Shan's living room. When they saw these people, everyone's expression changed instantly. Zhang Shan's heart was finally at ease. Meanwhile, in White Deer College, Zhang Feng personally brought the string of money to the paper mill. After the people from the Zhang residence were led to the mountain, they anxiously paced around the entrance of Zhang Feng's house. They could not take their eyes off the buildings here. However, after waiting for a long time, they did not see anyone who could talk to him. Only a security guard followed him closely, as if he was guarding against a thief. However, the more he waited, the more anxious he became. At this moment, the entrance of the residence was blocked, and there were officials at the door. It was undoubtedly about the purchase of land. When he left the city, he saw it clearly. This was an imperial edict from His Majesty, forbidding the purchase of land. At this moment, he thought of the situation in the residence. It would be strange if he was not anxious. After waiting for a long time, the servant was sweating profusely. He hurriedly asked, "Sir, I'll have to trouble you to help me look for her. Something big has happened at home." "What happened? Why does Feng need to help?" At this moment, Cheng Chimo's loud voice sounded not far away. When the security guard saw him, his eyes lit up. He hurriedly said, "He's Miss Zhang's servant. He said that Zhang Shan's Eason snack shop was blocked early this morning, and there were even officials. That's why he came up the mountain to find the dean." Cheng Chimo was half naked at this moment. He wiped his sweat and threw away the bundle of wood on his shoulder. He stared at the servant and sized him up. Is this true? The servant had never seen him before. However, when he saw that he seemed to be able to speak, he hurriedly said, "It's absolutely true. This little one does not dare to lie." Was there still any King law? Ching Chimo instantly exploded. He waved his hand and said, "Quickly prepare a fast horse. Follow Lao Tzu down the mountain immediately. How dare you cause trouble at Feng Zi's father-in-law's residence? You must be tired of living." Chapter 1478. They were from Zhongshan's mansion. Of course, they were the guards hired from Chang'an University. These people didn't even have time to change their clothes. Of course, they knew where Zhongshan's mansion was. When Jia Daoren was still alive, he had ordered that no one should care about anything in Chang'an City except for 3 places. One was Zhang Feng's mansion, the tavern, and the other was Zhang Feng's father-in-law's mansion. Other than that, no one was allowed to leave Chang'an University even if the sky fell down. Today everything was fine. But when they heard that something had happened in Zhongshan's mansion, how could they bear it? Chang'an University had been empty for the past few days, and these people had been bored out of their minds. Besides, they were all from the military and naturally liked to fight. In Chang'an City, no fighting was allowed. They had been bored out of their minds for a long time. It was rare that someone had come to make trouble today. It was a good time to beat someone up and not be responsible for it. How could they let it go? And where was this place? This was the mansion of the dean's father-in-law. This was the home of the future wife of Zhongshan's mansion. How could they take it lightly? At this time, these people didn't say a word. They just stood behind Zhongshan like wooden statues. However, the appearance of these people had a different meaning for these officials. Now Zhang Feng was the chancellor and dean of 2 academies. He was also a viscount and the youngest Confucian scholar. Although he was young and didn't have an official position in the imperial court, his identity and status were far beyond them. Because of his identity, they had to salute Zhang Feng when they saw him. They thought that Zhang Feng would be fine on the mountain at this time. That was why they came to have a look. After all, they just came to ask about the phosphate fertilizer. Naturally, Zhang Feng couldn't say anything even if he knew. However, these people were experts who had retired from the military. These people didn't care about that. They were very famous in Chang'an City. Other than Zhang Feng's orders, even if you were the crown prince, you would still have to bend your back. At this time, the few people heard that the old man and the steward of the Zhang mansion were quarreling. These people didn't say anything, so they panicked and could only mind their own business and enjoy the tea. He kept talking about the good tea and so on. Even the benefactor didn't dare to make a sound as he stared at the strong men in White Deer College's guard uniform. On the other hand, the old man, relying on his status as an elder and seeing that these big fools did not speak, became bolder. He coughed and said, "Shanzi, we are all family. Naturally, we should take care of the phosphate fertilizer. Go and tell your son-in-law that we will take over this matter. We will no longer object to his marriage with Yu Yao. Also, I heard that he bought a few hundred square meters of land yesterday. Why does he keep so much land? Coincidentally, our family is so poor that we don't even have enough to eat. Let him give half of the land deed to the old man." The old man? Then why don't you let Fengzi give you the 300 square meters of land and the business of White Deer College? Zhang Shan was so angry that he laughed and asked back. The old man didn't give anything away. He only said earnestly, "Alas! After all, he's still a little young and impatient. Since he doesn't have the time, this old man will help him a little. It's not impossible." His words made the 5 officials grin from ear to ear. It wasn't that they hadn't seen shameless people before, but it was the first time they saw such a shameless person. What kind of place was White Deer College? It was a place that was appointed by the emperor. How dare he covet it? Was this person crazy or stupid? At this moment, the benefactor saw that the guards behind Zhang Shan didn't get angry and didn't say anything. He became bolder and said disdainfully, "Old thing, I gave you some face and you really dared to open a dye house. You know Shanzi's situation better than anyone else. Now you're pretending to be a big shot? That college was appointed by the emperor. Do you think you're fit to take over it? Aren't you King afraid of dying from overeating? surnamed Huang. The old man didn't lower himself to your level because of Shanzi's master. Today I'll say it right here. If you want to get any benefits from this place, there's no way. Also, my lords, I'll make the decision regarding the phosphate fertilizer. How much do you want? I'll have that kid Zhang Feng come down the mountain tomorrow and personally deliver it to your residences such as, Old thing, your King tired of living. The guards who had been silent finally couldn't take it anymore. They could criticize anyone, but it wasn't right to criticize the dean's people like that. The purpose of today's visit was to ensure Zhang Shan's safety. As for the phosphate fertilizer and the land, even though these people were causing a ruckus here, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. However, they shouldn't have spoken ill of the dean. Seeing this, the old man instantly became like an angry rooster. He pointed at them with his walking stick and said, "Where did these barbarians come from? How dare you interfere in my family's affairs? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Aren't you just a dog raised by that bastard Zhang Feng? How dare you bark here?" Zhang Shan couldn't take it anymore. He scolded, "Zhang Shajian, are you done yet?" Chapter 1479. Zhang Shajian was the old man's real name. However, there were 2 or 3 shops in Chang'an city, so no one dared to call him by his full name. The most important thing was that this man was tricky and domineering, and he was very greedy. To be honest, he was a rascal. So basically, no one dared to offend him unless it was a big deal, mainly because they were afraid of being disgusted by him. The name Zhang Shajian was gradually forgotten. The old man had long stopped teaching this name. He went to the Huasheng temple and asked for an excessive name, Zhang Fulai. Therefore, he would definitely explode if anyone dared to mention the name Zhang Shajian. At this time, Zhang Shan dared to call him that in Zhang Shan's mansion. How could Zhang Fulai not explode? Bang! He slammed the teacup in his hand and pointed at Zhang Shan's nose as if he was shaking. "Bastard, how dare you talk to old man like that? Do you believe that old man will tear down your house today? Old man, that's enough. For the sake of your age, we won't embarrass you today. But if you really want to make trouble, I'll remind you that there are 5 officials here today. If you continue to pester us endlessly, even if we beat you to death, the government won't hold you responsible. Do you believe me? Don't King make trouble for yourself." One of the bodyguards behind Zhang Shan warned with his hands on his hips. Zhang Fulai was furious. He stomped his crutch and said, "Oh my God, is there any law? Is there any law? How dare you kill people in broad daylight? Zhang Shan, you're so powerful. Don't think that I'm afraid of you now that you have that bastard Zhang Feng backing you up. You were born a member of the Zhang family, so you have to obey the rules of the Zhang family. I, Zhang Fuxing, am now an elder of the Zhang family, so I'm the sky above you. If that Zhang Feng wants this marriage to go through, this old man will have to agree." While speaking, the old man pointed at the guards and scolded, "Don't King think that you can show off just because you have Zhang Feng, that son of a tch, to back you up. Soon the old man will report this to the authorities. How can you call yourself a great scholar? Was he even worthy of establishing a sect? Wasn't he embarrassed? Someone who doesn't even care about the most basic filial piety. Is he worthy? CK your mother." The person standing beside Zhang Shan was the first to lose his cool. He rushed forward, grabbed Zhang Fuxing's collar and lifted him up. In an instant, Zhang Fuxing was so scared that his whole body trembled. You, what are you doing? Brother, forget it." Zhang Shan didn't want to get involved, but he still stepped forward and pulled the guard back. The guard was stunned. He sighed heavily and put Zhang Fuxing down. Fine. However, if anyone dares to say anything bad about the principal, or destroy a blade of grass or a tree here, don't think that you can walk out of here unscathed. Zhang Shan sighed and didn't even look at Zhang Fuxing. "Leave. I won't give you anything you want. Also, Fengzi's matter has nothing to do with me. Even if they get married in the future, it has nothing to do with you. If you dare to cause trouble on the mountain, think about the consequences for the Tang family first." Hearing this, the few officials couldn't sit still anymore. They stood up and wanted to leave, But before they could finish, they saw a few of the dozens of strong men standing at the door stand behind them. In an instant, they realized that something was wrong, but it was obviously impossible for them to leave now. They could only sit down, trembling with fear. The benefactor was also panicking at this time. However, with the lesson of the past, what could he say? He could only sit obediently. When Zhang Shan saw this, he smacked his lips and wanted to say something, but he didn't dare to. After all, he didn't dare to offend these people. He didn't dare to offend any of them. Seeing that they didn't say anything, Zhang Shan breathed a sigh of relief. However, that damned Zhang Fuxing said arrogantly again, "You don't dare to offend them? Fine, fine, fine. Old man, let's offend Zhang Feng today." Zhang Feng's surname is also Zhang. Maybe a few generations ago, they came from the same family. Let's not talk about that first. That damned man has made a meteoric rise. He and Yu Yao's marriage is set. How many times have they gone in and out of Chang, and as a couple? How many people in Chang and city don't know? But what about the Zhang family? Did the Zhang family take advantage of them? On the other hand, those outsiders have made a meteoric rise. Look at those people in Tonghui Lane. How arrogant are they? Look at the Zhang family. We're still eating chaff here. Is there anyone in the world like him? I think he's the first person since ancient times, the first person who's so shameless. What did I, Zhang Fuxing, do wrong? I'll make it clear today. If he wants to marry the daughter of the Zhang family, Zhang Feng is not qualified. Zhang Fuxing was really pissed off today. How could a mere guard dare to strut around here? Where was this? This was the Zhang family. This was the family of Zhang Feng's official wife. How dare he make trouble here? If he doesn't want to be shameless, then come. Zhang Shan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Everyone knew. The marriage was forced by the old scholar and others. If Zhang Feng wanted to, he would have gotten married long ago. Why would it be delayed until now? As for why, to put it bluntly, they wanted to get along with each other. Now it seemed that Zhang Feng was a little interested. However, things on the mountain were too busy. Everyone knew that even if the wedding date came, they couldn't get married. But this old guy seemed to think that Zhang Feng was in a hurry to marry Zhang Yiyao. At this time, the guards behind Zhang Shan all had their chests heaving up and down. At this time, a guard saw that the old guy was spitting saliva everywhere. He angrily punched the pillar at the door. In an instant, a fist-sized hole appeared on the pillar. The guard clenched his fists and stared at Zhang Fuxing. "Boss, I feel like hitting someone. What should I do?" Chapter 1480. Zhang Fuxing heard that. He was instantly enraged. He pointed at the guard with his walking stick and said, "Why? You can't help but want to hit him? Come, come, come. Old man, I'll let you hit him. Come on. Beat him to death if you can. If you don't beat old man to death, you're not human." That shout. Everyone was instantly enraged. Even the 5 officials were frowning. They had seen people who wanted to die, but they had never seen anyone who wanted to die so badly. They were in someone else's house. Even if they beat him to death, as long as there was a valid reason, nothing would happen. Moreover, the 5 of them were present. Even Zhang Feng dared to kill someone in Chang and city with his men. Killing an old fart like you is nothing. Damn it, don't drag us down with you even if you have nothing better to do. If word of this got out, how would Lao Tzu and the others explain themselves when they got back? After all, even Li Xiaogong, Prince Li, had to act coquettishly when he saw Zhang Feng, let alone an old fart like you? Who do you think you are? The officials pondered. We can't do that. If a murder case were to be filed, none of them would be able to escape. They came to Zhang Feng's father-in-law's house to cause trouble. Putting everything else aside, how could the Minister of Personnel, Li Xiaogong, disturb them? That would be strange. Thinking of that, the 5 of them hurriedly got up and said, "Old sir, please calm down first. Let's talk things over, okay?" "Old sir, that's not right. After all, we're a family. How can a family speak like that? Let's calm down first. If there's anything, let's sit down and talk about it slowly, okay?" However, Zhang Fuxing saw that the others were trying to persuade him. In an instant, he thought that the officials were afraid of him and were on his side. He pointed at Zhang Shan and said, "Officials, can't you stand it anymore? This is the Zhang family we're talking about. I'm the only elder in the Zhang family. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about this matter first." He didn't do that in the first place, did he? What does Zhang Shan know? He was just a youngster who only knew how to make pastries. How would he know how to do business? What have I done? Wasn't it all for the sake of Zhang Shan? If by any chance you fall into Zhang Feng's trap, you'll lose the face of our Zhang clan's ancestors. After I die, will I be able to face my dead ancestors? Zhang Shan was trembling all over. It wasn't easy for him to persuade Zhang Feng's guards to come down, but when he saw it, he instantly felt dizzy. He hurriedly scolded, "Zhang Fuxing, you drove me out of the Zhang family in the presence of so many people in the East Market and the local government of Chang'an. You also declared that you would never allow me, Zhang Shan, to enter the gate of the Zhang family in the future. But now you're thinking of me? You and I both know what you're thinking. Why do you have to be so pretentious? I'm a hypocrite." Zhang Fuxing grabbed Zhang Shan and pulled him to the side of the official from the Ministry of Personnel. "Sir." The corner of the official's mouth twitched. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "My surname is Shi, and my name is Jing. You can call me Shi Jing. If you have anything to say, just say it." "Well, shopkeeper Zhang, please calm down. We're a family. Let's talk about it. What do you think?" Seeing this, Zhang Fuxing became even more smug. He waved his hand and said, "I have nothing else to say today. I just want to be the judge. When this boy's parents died early, I saw that he was still young and didn't know the dangers of society. Besides, he had such a large family property, so I kindly helped him. But I didn't expect that this boy has grown up and doesn't recognize that family anymore. He even blamed me for taking over his family property. You can be the judge for me. Is there such a person in the world? Is old man the kind of person who takes over family property? Don't I want the Zhang clan's bloodline to continue, so that it won't be buried in his hands? What did I do wrong?" In an instant, the faces of those officials could not help but be filled with black lines. Fu *K, he's really good at talking. He's turning black into white. Shi Jing chuckled and said apologetically, "After all, this is not the place to talk. If you really have something to say, why don't you go to the Chang and local government now? Or can you?" "No." Hearing this, Zhang Fuxing immediately interrupted Shi Jing and said, "Everyone knows that place. It's in cahoots with Zhang Feng. I don't trust them." This, Shi Jing wanted to curse. Fu *Ku. If you don't go to the local government, what the Fu *K do you want to do? Fu *K, if you want to do it, you can do it secretly. Why did you wait until today? You just want to take advantage of the opportunity, don't you? If you can say that, what can't you do? However, when they looked behind them and saw the guards looking at them coldly, they didn't dare to move in an instant. They only prayed that Lord Zhang still had a trace of reason and wouldn't make things out of hand. Otherwise they would really be miserable. But what they feared would happen. At this moment, there was a sound of cursing. A man rushed all the way into Zhang Shan's mansion. When Zhang Shan and the guard saw that, their faces instantly flashed with a touch of surprise. It was as if the person who came was their savior. And that was exactly what happened. The person who came was Cheng Chimo. As soon as Cheng Chimo entered, he looked up and down at the thin-mouthed old man who was grabbing Zhang Shan's collar. When the guards whispered in his ear, his face instantly turned cold. He looked at the old man indifferently and said, "Old man, do you have any shame?" If anyone dares to come and cause trouble, beat them to death. Even if you beat him to death, nothing will happen. When the guards heard this, they instantly gave a military salute. At this moment, that benefactor's face turned extremely pale. When he saw Cheng Chimo waving his hand, he scampered out of the door. Today, he really wanted to slap himself a few times. He originally wanted to come here to get some benefits, but he didn't expect that not only did he not get any benefits, But he also got himself into trouble and almost lost his life. Zhang Feng. All of this was because of Zhang Feng. Zhang Shan really gave birth to a good daughter. Damn it. After all the unrelated people had left, Cheng Chimo minded his own business and sat beside Zhang Shan. He looked at Zhang Fuxing, who was glaring at him angrily. Zhang Shajian, Lao Tzu remembers you. You were arrogant and domineering in Chang'an city. How is that stupid son of yours doing in Luozhou? Why didn't King kill him back then? When Zhang Fuxing heard this, the hair on his back instantly stood on end. During the first year of Zhengguan, they were at their most prosperous. At that time, his eldest son was considered a big shot in Chang'an city. However, he heard that he had offended a big shot outside and was almost killed. When he was dragged back, he only had one breath left. If it weren't for the huge sum of money spent, the grass on his grave would have been a foot deep. But he didn't know who it was. Ever since his son recovered from his illness, he didn't dare to stay in Chang'an. He had no choice but to go to Luozhou. He even told him not to seek revenge. If he did, his entire family would be gone. Now, you harmed my son? Cheng Chimo nodded non-committally. Last March, your son barged into the house of an assistant minister of the Taifu temple at night. He wanted to rape the daughter of the assistant minister. If Lao Tzu hadn't been present that night, the daughter of the assistant minister would have been killed by your son. Such a despicable act should have been exterminated back then. How dare you? My son was sincere. How could he be a shameless person like you said? If we're talking about shameless people, I think you're the one. Who doesn't know that you're one of the 4 great demons of Chang'an city? You barged into an assistant minister's house in the middle of the night. Do you think he belongs to you? Do you think you can go whenever you want? Cheng Chimo smiled at the angry Zhang Fuxing and didn't explain anything. Zhang Shan wanted to interrupt, but he didn't know what to say. After all, this incident had caused a stir in Chang'an city back then. At that time, the assistant minister of Taichung Temple had threatened to exterminate Zhang Fuxing's entire family. However, for some reason, the matter had been left unsettled. Could it be, this person had saved Zhang Fuxing from death? Now that he thought about it, he understood everything that he didn't understand back then. But why did Cheng Tinia mention this at this time? Could it be that he wanted to anger Zhang Fuxing? Thinking of this, Zhang Shan shuddered. He hurriedly asked, Young Master Qin, were you the one who saved the Qin family? Chapter 1482. Cheng Chimo nodded noncommittally and said, Old Master Zhang, may I trouble you to go to the backyard? I have some personal matters to attend to. Zhang Shan's pupils constricted when he heard that. At this moment, Young Master Qin, let's forget about this. After all, he didn't make things difficult for me. Speaking of which, we are indeed from the same family. As long as he doesn't make things difficult for me today, let him go. You want me to go? Zhang Fuxing didn't think too much. At this moment, his mind was full of hatred for his son and the purpose of today's visit. How could he think of anything else? He waved his walking stick and said, Zhang Shan, if you're afraid of trouble, get lost. I'll settle the score with you later. I'll settle the score with this little bastard first. My son was almost killed by him. Who is that? That's your cousin. Are you just going to watch your cousin be wronged like this? What could Zhang Shan say? He knew all about his cousin. Among the stubborn people in Chang'an city, he was the most stubborn one. He ate, drank, gambled, and drank. The most abominable thing was, he even coveted the daughter of the assistant minister. He broke into their house in the middle of the night. What Zhang Fuxing did not know was that on that night, all of his accomplices were killed. His son, who knew if he was lucky or not, managed to survive. Who would have thought that he would still want to settle the score today? Cheng Tini wanted to lure him away just now because he was infuriated and wanted to kill him. After all, this was the Zhang family's territory. If he really killed Zhang Fuxing here, would the Zhang family spare him? It would be so annoying. But at this moment, Cheng Chimo smiled in the face of Zhang Fuxing's aggressiveness. He pursed his lips and said, What are you waiting for? Go invite old Master Zhang in. Also informed the Chang'an local government and the Ministry of Personnel that Lao Tzu said to give them 2 hours to investigate the background of Zhang Fuxing's family. These guards all knew Cheng Chimo's true identity. When they heard Cheng Chimo's words, they instantly understood. After leaving a dozen people behind, the rest left in a hurry. He even took Zhang Shan away. Zhang Shan was invited to the backyard. Mrs. Zhang immediately came over and asked, "What's going on in front?" Zhang Shan smiled bitterly. He looked at Zhang Yuyao and the woman and said, "Zhang Fuxing is in big trouble this time. Zhang Feng didn't come, but the 4 great demon king Cheng Tinu came." What? Madame Zhang's expression changed drastically when she heard that. Cheng Tinu was someone who dared to kill people on the streets, and he didn't even need to take responsibility. Everyone knew that there must be some incredible empress behind him, but no one has ever seen it. Every time he got into trouble, he would still be seen swaggering on the streets in a few days. How could an ordinary family afford to offend this person? Even the sons of the officials had to take a detour when they saw him, let alone these merchants. They were simply not on the same level, okay? Then has uncle left yet? Zhang Shan smiled bitterly and said, "How could it be that easy? It's not like you don't know his reputation." Madame Zhang's expression changed drastically when she heard that. She asked, "Then why are you here? Why don't you go and keep an eye on him? What if something happens?" Although we've been expelled from the Zhang family, we're still members of the Zhang family. If something happens here, let alone our reputation, will the Zhang family let us go? Zhang Shan spread out his hands and said, "I want to, but I was invited by Chen Tiniu. Moreover, Chen Tiniu has already admitted that he was the one who almost killed Zhang Fuxing's son back then. Now, he even sent someone to ask the Ministry of Personnel to investigate Zhang Fuxing's account." Could they investigate Zhang Fuxing's accounts? They couldn't. Why? How did Zhang Fuxing get started? Wasn't it because of his ability to swindle people? Coupled with his ability to speculate, everything he had today was what he had today. Obviously, Cheng Tiniu was really angry. He wanted to completely eliminate the Zhang family's future troubles. But, after all, this was related by blood. Madame Zhang was also clear about what was right and wrong. She was panicking. At this moment, Zhang Yuyao whispered, "Father, then did you send someone to look for Zhang Feng? I reckon only Zhang Feng can handle this matter." Zhang Shan slapped his forehead and said, "That's right. How could I have forgotten about this? Men, someone come quickly." Zhang Shan hurriedly shouted at the door. A moment later, the old butler hurried in. Zhang Shan hurriedly said, "Immediately send someone to the mountain to inform Zhang Feng. Immediately get a fast horse." Yes. At the same time, on the mountain, Zhang Feng carried a string of money with him. Along the way, he was stumped by this kid's amazing business acumen several times. This kid was born to be a business genius. However, Zhang Feng was only half a jar. How could he know too much? It had only been 4 hours and he was already speechless. He could only look for a few great scholars to send this kid to the academy to learn how to read. Otherwise, this little demon would kill Zhang Feng sooner or later. However, when Zhang Feng arrived at the door of his house, the guard hurriedly told him about the people in Zhang Shan's mansion. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's face instantly changed and he said, "Damn it, this is bad. This grandson is going to get into big trouble." With this grandson's temper, how could he be handling things? If he said something wrong, he would beat people up. Damn it, at the thought of this, Zhang Feng threw the string of money and shouted, "Men, prepare a horse for me. I want to go down the mountain." Chapter 1483. This matter had to be settled as soon as possible. Although there seemed to be no problem at the moment, once something happened, it would definitely be a big problem. This was indisputable. This matter should have already attracted the attention of the emperor. As for the land sale and phosphate fertilizer, although Zhang Feng had already made arrangements, these people actually went to Zhang Shan's residence. This was a bit too much. It was no wonder that Zhang Feng was so impatient. Lion, it was these people. Motherf **Ker, they were disgusting. If you said you would come properly, then I would have accepted it. but you actually used underhanded methods. This is your fault. Zhang Feng's actions instantly alarmed the entire upper management of the academy. Yu Shinan and the others were in the courtyard, flipping through Zhang Feng's poetry and drinking wine. When they heard Zhang Feng's impatient voice, they couldn't help but be stunned. They hurriedly sent someone to inquire about it, and their faces instantly changed. Especially the old Xiaocai, who almost fainted. He hurriedly sent someone to find a carriage, and was about to run down the mountain. Fortunately, he was stopped by someone. Chu Suiliang hurriedly said, "Brother Zihuai, don't worry. I just asked, that child Tainyo has already left. Perhaps by the time Fengzi comes down the mountain, the matter with the Zhang family will have already been settled. Besides, Zhang Shan is not a fool. He will naturally go to Chang'an University to ask for help." The old Xiaocai was still unwilling and hurriedly said, No, I still have to go down the mountain and take a look. This marriage, speaking of which, this old man was the one who made the decision to tell Fengzi. It's not like you don't know that child Tainyo's temper is bad. This kid is impetuous and will only make things worse. Go where? Don't worry, brother Zihuai. Li Gang also hurriedly dissuaded him, saying, Don't worry, I will ask Li Gan to go personally. How about it? After much persuasion, the old Xiaocai was finally calmed down. Then Li Gang personally went to find Li Chengqian and told him about the matter. Li Chengqian and the others' faces suddenly changed. After yesterday's incident, they expected that something big would happen today, but they didn't expect it to be such a big matter. There were actually some officials, as well as some smelly people, who actually dared to come over and ask for things. Did he have no King shame? Master, don't be anxious. I'll go down the mountain now, and I'll definitely give you a satisfactory answer. When Li Gang heard that, he nodded and said, Good. Remember, don't do anything out of line. Tainyo, that child, has already left the mountain. Who knows, there might be blood today. You have to deal with it properly. What? Li Chengqian was instantly shocked. He didn't have time to say anything. He called out to everyone, and then hurriedly rushed towards the mountain gate. There was a rule on the mountain that no student was allowed to sit in a sedan chair on the mountain except for the Confucian scholars, the teachers, and the kitchen staff. Therefore, even though he was the crown prince, he could only run as fast as he could. Almost all of the students in the academy had seen this shot. In the next moment, the news of another incident at the foot of the mountain spread like wildfire. But all of this, very few people in Chang'an city knew about it. But Li Shimin had already received the news. The person who sent the news was Fang Xianling. After entering the imperial study, Fang Xianling hurriedly reported this matter to Li Shimin. When Li Shimin saw this, he was also confused. My dear minister, what's the matter with Zhang Fusheng? And what's the matter with these officials? Li Shimin also had some guesses about this. People. They all had their own selfish motives. Especially at this time. Before, whether it was paper-making or other things, those huge profits could only make them envious, but they couldn't do anything about it. This phosphate fertilizer was different. This thing not only had huge profits, but also could be used as soon as possible. In this society, food was the only magic weapon that could improve one's reputation and status. Therefore, in front of this thing, everyone had to erupt with an unprecedented desire. But Li Shimin also had some fun. He didn't expect that the Zhang family mansion, which they had been hiding, would be targeted by someone. This was simply preposterous. Wouldn't that mean that after a period of time, all the places related to Zhang Feng would be targeted by others? In that case, didn't it mean that there would be people who would target the illusory Lao Li? The fake identity of Lao Li had been used all this time. Although Li Shimin had a feeling that this matter would be exposed, he had already planned to find someone who looked similar to his disguise to replace him. But until now, no one had found him. Moreover, this identity couldn't be studied deeply. This window paper would be exposed with a bucket of water. At this time, it wasn't a question of whether Li Shimin wanted to lay his cards on the table, but this was not the right time. He didn't know when the unknown pair of hands behind his back would find him. This person must have thought of this and guessed his true identity. That was why he dared to come and cause trouble so blatantly. As for the purpose, it was to make him retreat or expose himself. Once his identity was exposed, there would naturally be cracks in his relationship with Zhang Feng, and it would no longer be the same as before. What a vicious mind! How could Li Shimin dare to let Zhang Feng reveal himself at this time? How would he dare to lay his cards on the table? Wei Jing bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I've heard about what happened in Zhongshan's mansion today, but I don't think it has anything to do with those people. If Prime Minister Wei is here to plead for those people, then don't talk about it anymore. You naturally know the pros and cons of this matter. I don't want to mention it. You also know that those hands behind my back always make me unable to sleep well. This time, if it's not him, then it's fine. But if it's him, Prime Minister Wei, have you thought about the consequences of this matter?" Hearing this, Wei Jing fell silent. This matter was really as the emperor said. What if it's him? This matter was a little terrifying. Seeing this, Li Shimin sighed and rubbed his forehead, saying, "Don't ask about this matter. I'd like to see what's going on today's matter. Think about it, if I tolerate this matter, what about the next time? What if this person comes again next time? That person must know my identity like the back of his hand, so he dares to be so unscrupulous. If I tolerate it, do you think I have to act according to his wishes every time?" Hearing this, Wei Jing instantly turned pale. This matter. It was really as the emperor said. Who could guarantee that it wasn't a conspiracy? Moreover, these mysteries were now connected by Zhang Feng. From being able to manipulate the entire war outside the Tang dynasty to the relationship between the noble families, what else couldn't he do? Thinking of this, Wei Jing took a deep breath, bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I'm stupid." Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Forget it. If it weren't for Fengzi's unintentional guess, even I wouldn't have thought of it. You know what to do about this matter, don't you?" Wei Jing was stunned. "I'm stupid. Your Majesty, please tell me." Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "When you go out later, argue with me. Then, when you go out, spread rumors that you don't get along with me. And in the morning court tomorrow you know what to do, don't you?" Wei Zheng's face changed, and he hurriedly knelt and said, "Your Majesty, I dare not do that." Li Shimin helped Wei Zheng up with a serious face and said, "I said that this is a test. Although I don't get along with you on the surface, I'll give you a task. Secretly use your people to find out the dishonest people in the capital during this period, and investigate the princes and dukes." Wei Zheng's face suddenly changed when he heard this. "Your Majesty, I'm afraid." Today let's loosen up our muscles and bones. Niu Weili. It was also an imperial edict issued by the emperor. In other words, the emperor had already acquiesced to this matter. At this time, these people came here to make trouble. They didn't understand the ways of the world, did they? Under the suspicious gazes of the crowd, the ball-like woman finally arrived at the entrance of Zhang Shan's mansion with a murderous look on her face. As soon as she arrived at the entrance of the mansion, the fat woman acted as if she didn't know anything. She waved her hand and said, "Come on, pour the prepared gift on his door. Whoever dares to block the way, pour it on him." While speaking, he saw more than a dozen fat and strong men, covering their noses as they carried buckets after buckets of wine from the tribute buckets they had been immersed in. At first, the 7 guards didn't take it seriously, but when this thing came out, their faces changed dramatically in an instant. At this time, they stood vigilantly at the gate of the mansion and formed a line of defense. The guard who shouted before stepped forward and scolded, "This is the mansion of President Zhang Zhang's father-in-law. How dare you make trouble here? Retreat quickly. Yo, where did this bastard come from? How dare he bark at me here? Come on, pour it for me. How can I let you be *tch point fingers at me here? If you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll cut off your tongue." The fat woman looked at the 7 people with disdain, then pointed at herself and her 2 sons behind her with her thumb and said, "See, that bastard Zhang Feng has grown up. He doesn't even come to pay respects to me. I'm going back to my own home. How can I block the way for you bastards? Who do you think you are? Go back and call that little bastard Zhang Feng down for me." "Shut up. Shut up." At this time, 2 angry roars sounded, one in front of the woman and one behind her. In an instant, the woman was furious. Her 2 silly sons behind her were also furious. "Are you blind? Where is this? This is Lao Tzu's mansion. Lao Tzu is going back to his own home. It's none of your business. Get the F***ck out of Lao Tzu's way. That's right. Go and tell that Zhang Feng to quickly come and pay respects to his brother-in-law." As for the 7 guards, they did not pay any attention to them. Instead, they looked behind the crowd at a robust man with a curly beard who had arrived with an ashen face. Merely this robust man was a bit old. However, his aura was still present. The man was Cheng Yaojin. Cheng Yaojin looked at the woman and the 2 people who were still barking. He waved to the dozen people behind him and said, "Cut off their tongues for Lao Tzu." Zhang Shan couldn't hold it in any longer. It was supposed to be a boring topic. Why did it suddenly change in style? "Fengzi, that's enough. We still have things to do," Zhang Shan reminded him in a low voice. Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded. He put away the smile on his face and didn't even bother to look at Zhang Fuxing. He said, "If there's nothing else, you really can't leave here today. Zhang Feng, I'm your tenant." Seeing this, Zhang Fuxing took out his trump card and directly shouted sadly, "Fengzi, I know that you're a kind person and I know your current achievements. But you can't just stand by and watch us like this, right? We're a family. I'm doing this, saying this. Aren't I thinking for you? Think about it. This is such a big industry. You're not worried about leaving it to outsiders?" "Shut up." Zhang Feng was also annoyed. He waved his hand and said, "Since you attacked Master Zhang in the street, drove him out, and seized his property, you and Master Zhang have been 2 different families. Today, I don't know who ordered you to come, and I don't want to know because Lao Tzu is disgusted by you." Hearing this, Zhang Fuxing's face changed dramatically. So everything that happened before was just Zhang Feng toying with him? Thinking of this, Zhang Fuxing's face changed instantly. He scolded, "Zhang, this is Chang'an City, under the emperor's feet. And this is not your family's business. You have no right to control me." Zhang Feng couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, "Chintiniu." Hearing this, Chen Chimo hurriedly got up and said, "Yes. Drag him out." "Okay." Hearing this, Zhang Fuxing instantly screamed, "Zhang Feng, what are you doing? I'm your grandfather. How dare you do this? Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng patted his forehead and said, "I almost forgot. Tiniu, do you know how to kill people?" This time, not to mention Zhang Fuxing, even Zhang Shan's eyelids were twitching wildly. "Fengzi, don't be impulsive. It's not worth it to do this for such a person." Zhang Fuxing was also angry. At this time, being carried by Chen Chimo, his 3 souls and 7 spirits were gone. He hurriedly begged for mercy. "Fengzi, Zhang Feng, no, Prince Zhang, please spare my life. I won't dare to come again in the future." When Zhang Feng heard this, he nodded as if he was easy to talk to. "Sure. Then tell me, who sent you here today?" In an instant, Zhang Fuxing was speechless. Seeing this, Zhang Feng spread his hands. "In that case, I'm sorry, but I'll have to kill you first." Chapter 1491. In fact, from what Zhang Feng had learned before and after coming here today, he could tell that this matter was not driven by someone else. If there was someone who was driven by someone else, it would not be Zhang Fuxing. As for today's matter, Zhang Feng guessed that the problem should be with Zhang Fuxing's family. Or at this moment, it was indeed a coincidence. Before the imperial edict appeared today, no one knew what would happen to the phosphate fertilizer. In addition, the matter of the wheat sprouting last night had been brewing. At this moment, with the support of the imperial edict, the truth of the matter was completely revealed in an instant. It was also because of this that people started to make plans. In the face of such a huge temptation, many people would choose to take the risk because of this thing. This was not strange. Especially when Zhang Fuxing said that he had been to the Liang State House and the tea at Phoenix Ridge. Zhang Feng was already certain that this matter had nothing to do with Zhang Fuxing. It was just that this unlucky person had run into it himself. This could not be blamed on others. At this moment, Zhang Shan looked at Zhang Fuxing, who was being dragged out, and asked with a face full of worry, "Fengzi, if we do this, will your reputation?" Zhang Feng waved his hand and gestured for Zhang Shan to sit down. Then he said, "He was in the wrong first, yet he was so arrogant as to covet my things. He definitely does not know that I do not dare to touch these things. Do you know why?" Zhang Shan frowned and then asked hesitantly, "Is it because of the emperor?" Zhang Feng nodded heavily and said, "Regardless of the dynasty, things like salt and grain are all controlled by the royal family. This phosphate fertilizer is enough to change the course of an era. Do you think the emperor will allow it to appear in the hands of one person? Even if he is really talented, and is someone who is wholeheartedly thinking of the people?" Zhang Feng shook his head and looked at Fang Xianling. "No. Because in this era, why is there imperial power? Because it represents the centralization of power and the unification of the country. If this is not achieved, then this country will be in danger. Our emperor is a wise emperor. A good emperor rarely seen in thousands of years. How could he allow the people who had just calmed down to start a war again? It is precisely because of this that the emperor was willing to humiliate his son to cut off the white horse by the Wei River and sign the contract. All of this is because of Taiping." At this time, Fang Xuanling's whole body was almost shaking. If only Zhang Feng's words were said in front of the emperor. But, at this moment, he finally understood why Zhang Feng was willing to share his things, and even tacitly allowed them to cooperate with the imperial palace. It turned out that it was all because he understood the emperor. He understood the emperor. Such people were too few and far between. At this moment, Fang Xianling couldn't help but say, "Fengzi is right. Master Zhang, we are all businessmen and naturally want the world to be peaceful. You also know the effect of this phosphate fertilizer. Whoever controls it is equivalent to controlling the lifeline of the Tang dynasty. Even if the emperor acquiesces, many people are not willing. What happened today may happen at any time in the future. The most terrible thing is that there may be a war." Hearing this, Zhang Shan sucked in a breath of cold air in shock. Fang Xianling said slowly, "So although Zhang Feng seemed a little reckless today, in fact he was protecting you. If this matter is spread to the palace, it will be a serious crime that will be exterminated. Although this crime is not committed by the emperor himself, those in the imperial court who covet this phosphate fertilizer will crazily add insult to injury. You are Zhang Feng's father-in-law. So once this matter is spread out, then today, not only you, but also Fengzi will be in trouble." This time, Zhang Shan was really scared to death. He hurriedly asked, "Then in this case the emperor was really alarmed today?" Fang Xianling nodded and said, "You don't know yet. Just now, this guy's subordinates were barking outside the door, saying that these things belong to the Zhang family, and that they are also the property of the Zhang family. Today they came to take back the property in Zhang Feng's hands. In this case, with this sentence, they have committed a capital crime, and it is very likely that you will be implicated. But fortunately, our second master, Lao Li, mediated behind the scenes, so Zhang Shan was in a bad mood. In an instant, a fine layer of cold sweat appeared on his head. He knew it. Why did the old man come alone today? It turned out that they were divided into two groups. If it weren't for Zhang Feng and Zhang Feng's friends, he really didn't know what would happen today. Unable to help himself, Zhang Shan hurriedly got up and bowed to Feng Xianling. Okay, you don't have to worry about this. It's getting late. I have to deal with other things quickly. Fengzi, you have to come with me. After finishing his words, Feng Xianling cupped his hands and hurriedly walked out of the door with Li Chengqian and the others. He didn't give Zhang Feng any chance to hesitate. Zhang Feng smacked his lips, then also cupped his hands and asked, Auntie and the others, are they all right? Hearing this, Zhang Shan sighed and said, they are all fine. I didn't consider this matter thoroughly. Today, I will arrange for the people in the mansion to stay. They only need to have 3 full meals a day. As for the other things, you don't have to worry about them. I'll go first and visit another day. As Zhang Feng spoke, he turned and left. But when he walked to the door, Zhang Feng said, Uncle Zhang, don't investigate what happened today. Chapter 1492. Zhang Feng's intention was actually very simple. He didn't want Zhang Shan to get involved. The more people involved, the more complicated it would be. This matter was already troublesome enough. If there were more people involved, it would be more troublesome to deal with. It seemed that this was probably the mastermind who wanted to muddy the waters. How could Zhang Feng not know all this? If it were him, he would do the same. Seeing the duck in his mouth fly away just like that, and making the matter known to the whole world. Even Zhang Feng himself would want to take revenge. Moreover, from this matter, it seemed that this person already knew that their matter had been discovered by Lao Tzu. This time, things seemed to be getting more interesting. Someone wanted to make trouble and muddy the waters. Then Lao Tzu wouldn't go back to the mountain. He would stay in Chang'an city to fight with you. Although Zhang Feng still didn't know who this person was, he vaguely felt that this person seemed to know him to a certain extent. Looking at the imperial guards at the door, Zhang Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. Who the hell are you? However, the answer to Zhang Feng was Feng Xuanling's urging voice. Fengzi, now is not the time to think about this. I have other things to discuss with you. Let's get in the car and talk. While speaking, Feng Xianling hurriedly got into the carriage with Zhang Feng. Once they got in the car, Feng Xianling said with a dignified look, I suspect that something is wrong with this matter. Zhang Feng was surprised when he heard that. He said, You noticed it too? Feng Xianling nodded. Last night, a house in the Jiaqing area caught fire. Zhang Feng stared. What's the point of locking it up here? Feng Xianling interrupted Zhang Feng and said, Can you listen to me first? Zhang Feng nodded speechlessly and made a gesture of invitation. He was also very curious. Wasn't it just a fire? The houses in Jiaqing were similar to the old city. Most of them were in disrepair and were located in the corner. Therefore, few people lived there. Most of the people who lived there were poor people. But even so, there were very few people here. Basically, the people of Chang'an were concentrated in the east and west cities. It was not surprising that a fire broke out here. Feng Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng and slowly said, Last night, this place caught fire. It was not surprising, but the spies in the palace found more than 30 people wearing night clothes entering this house. Furthermore, this house used quilts to cover the surrounding doors and windows. Do you understand now? Zhang Feng's eyes widened when he heard this. If he still didn't understand this, then he would have lived in vain. He hurriedly asked, Then which mysterious person's stronghold is this? Feng Xianling shook his head with a bitter smile. Let me finish. Chapter 1493. North of the city. That was the general name of this place. At this moment, there were already many soldiers guarding this place. Countless people were holding hoes and rummaging through the place. What? The original courtyard at this moment could not even find a piece of intact charred wood. It had all been hacked into pieces. But at this moment, a horse carriage and a group of imperial guards hurried over, instantly breaking the silence here. The people who came were naturally Zhang Feng and Fang Xianling. Zhang Sun Wuji, who was guarding at the side, saw this and hurried forward. At this moment, both of them were in disguise. Moreover, these were imperial guards. Therefore, although they knew their identities, they did not show any abnormal emotions in front of strict orders. However, although this horse carriage belonged to Fang Xianling, the person who could make the Lord Zhongsun personally stand up to welcome, it was definitely not Fang Xianling. Then who could it be? Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Feng slowly lifted the curtain and jumped down from the horse carriage. At this moment, all the imperial guards could not help but be shocked. Someone who could come with Fang Gongzi and make the Lord Zhongsun personally welcome him. He is Mr. He Xian? Suddenly, an imperial guard exclaimed in a low voice. Although his voice wasn't loud, all the imperial guards instantly understood what he meant. Zhang Sun Wuji could not help but frown when he heard the commotion. He cupped his hands towards Zhang Feng and said helplessly, "Fengzi, this time, it has been hard on you." Zhang Feng also pointed at the group of imperial guards in astonishment. "You brought all these people here?" Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji's expression froze. He coughed and said loudly, "How could I have the ability to mobilize the imperial guards? Lord Zhongsun lent them to me. He said that it was not convenient for him to come here, so he asked me to bring some people to look for clues. The most important thing is to surround this place. Since old Feng invited you here, you should go and take a look." While speaking, Zhang Sun Wuji waved his hand and said, "Since everyone knows Zhang Feng, old man will not introduce you. This time, I invited President Zhang here to see if there are any clues. Everyone, please make way." What the hell was going on? Lord Zhongsun, this was, however, even though everyone was thinking the same thing, they still opened up a path for him. It was the first time that Zhang Feng felt the deterrence of the imperial guards at such a close distance. To be escorted by the imperial guards, he had basically circled around Chang'an. Now there were so many imperial guards standing on both sides. This awesome. Although she was happy in her heart, she couldn't help but curse when she saw the mess that had been turned over. As soon as he came in, Zhang Feng had the illusion that he had walked into a garbage dump. It was the feeling that a nail as thick as a thumb could sneak into the soles of his feet at any time. Zhang Feng had an impulse to step on the ground at this time. At this moment, the ground in front of Zhang Feng was covered in mud, and the low-lying area was full of muddy water. There were also some small things on the surface of the water that were moving up and down. Zhang Feng looked at these things in front of him and felt a chill. "I say, old son, how did this land become like this? Did these soldiers really plow this place?" Zhang Sun Wuji looked around indifferently and said, "Isn't this the way to check?" "No need to check. It's useless." Zhang Feng found a safe place with a wry smile and moved forward little by little. Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji was stunned. In fact, he had known about this matter for a long time. If this place was burned by someone, what clues would the person behind the scenes leave? But if he didn't look for it, he couldn't do it. After all, the emperor was angry. If he didn't find anything now, how could he explain it to the emperor? At this time, hearing Zhang Feng's words, Zhang Sun Wuji hurriedly followed Zhang Feng and asked, "What do you mean?" Zhang Feng pointed to the remaining half of the brick wall not far away, which was still covered by a pile of debris, and said, "Find someone to clean it up. I'll give you a surprise later." Hearing this, although Zhang Sun Wuji was a little suspicious, he still waved his hand and asked someone to quickly clean up the debris on the ground. After a while, the three of them also came here. Zhang Feng looked at the burned wall in front of him and gestured for a while. This seemed to be a central room. This place was usually a place to put a table or an offering table. But even if the table and chairs were burned here, the entire wall wouldn't be burned black. Then there was only one possibility. That was, this place was specially taken care of. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng no longer paid attention to others. He took out the dagger from his arms and gently scratched the black ash on the wall and in the cracks of the bricks. Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling saw this and squatted down curiously. At this time, the imperial guards also curiously gathered around at this time. They had searched this place at least 10 times. They hadn't found any clues. This wall was nothing more than a normal thing. Could it be that there was something extraordinary inside? Zhang Feng didn't pay attention to them. He still meticulously used the blade of the dagger to gently scratch every crack of the bricks. Just when Zhang Sunwuji wanted to ask Zhang Feng, suddenly, the tip of Zhang Feng's dagger sank deep into the wall somewhere. This time, everyone's eyes were fixed on that place. What else is there except for this wall? And think about it. Can ordinary people afford to use this brick? Hearing this, Zhang Sunwuji and Feng Xianling instantly figured everything out. So you agreed to come here because you heard about this wall? Zhang Feng shrugged noncommittally. He ignored the two of them and admired the way these people stuck out their butts. After waiting for a while, an imperial guard exclaimed, and Zhang Feng instantly became excited. Quick, 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 get out of the way. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly made way for the hole. Zhang Feng didn't care about the mud on the ground and hurriedly pushed them away and got in. Zhang Sunwuji still didn't understand the situation. He hurriedly pulled the imperial guard who shouted just now and asked, "What's inside?" Inside is an underground palace. An underground palace? What? Zhang Sunwuji and Feng Xianling couldn't help but exclaim. They hurriedly pulled the crowd and then followed Zhang Feng into the underground palace. It was dark inside the palace. It was also very humid. After the three of them went in, there was a straight staircase not far away. Inside they could vaguely see candlelight jumping. Seeing this, Zhang Sunwuji was instantly shocked. He hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng out. Before Zhang Feng could ask, he scolded. "Come on, quickly go down and check for me." Underground palace. This was an incomparably huge underground palace. The area of the underground palace was as large as the sum of 3 houses. Although Zhang Sunwuji didn't go down, he could see a trace of the outline from the faint candlelight. To be able to have such a large underground palace in Chang'an city, why didn't they find any trace of it before? Under the emperor's feet, such a large underground palace. This was the first time in history that something like this had ever happened. Who on earth was so bold and presumptuous to have such a large underground palace here? Zhang Feng didn't say anything. Instead, he was playing with a piece of gold the size of an egg in his hand. The surface of the gold was carved into the shape of a fish scale. At this time, in this place he dug out this? After the imperial guard who hurriedly made the torches went into the cave, Zhang Feng nudged the two with his elbow, opened his palm, and asked, "You too, this thing. You are experienced and knowledgeable. What is in this cave? What statue is it?"